What's going on, everybody? It's your man Louie T here with another installment of the Louie T Network podcast. NFL schedule was released yesterday in its entirety. We will discuss the primetime games, the discrepancy in which these games were dished out, and I do love the transparency. At least they came out and said, look, if you trash, you're not getting no games. And the Jets owe us one, right? An unprecedented amount of games on primetime in the first 10 weeks for the New York Jets. We'll discuss all of those things and more. We'll take a look at each and every single team's schedule and go through it quickly tonight. So, a lot to get to. You're locked in to the 419th installment of the Louie T Network podcast that starts now. The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHead's classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description. Who else could it be? Me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to the 419th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. So I probably could have started this a little bit earlier because the game in question, Wolves and Nuggets, is a pure, unadulterated, good old-fashioned, passionate ass whooping and getting your shoes coat and your hat took it. Damn. Shout out to the Minnesota Timberwolves for hitting the Nuggets with the Ayanla. Not on my floor. They won't having that shit. You're not going to close me out on my floor. Okay. There's nothing worse than getting beat and having your season ended on your own home floor. And the Nuggets seem disinterested from the jump, but I can't even chalk this up to the Nuggets not playing well. They got blitzed. The Wolves just wanted this one more. Flat out. A 25-3 run in the first quarter. Are you kidding me? They just wanted it more. And they came out from the jump, from the tip, and they asserted dominance. And I talk about adjustments all the time. And Anthony Edwards clearly saw what Joker did in Game 5 and said, okay, anything you can do, I can do better. I can do anything better than you. And he went out and he asserted dominance from the word go. And he was aggressive. I think that was one of the adjustments that he made. And, you know, when you're a young player and you're in the postseason and, you know, for Anthony Edwards, it's only his second time in the postseason. So a lot of the things that he's seeing and a lot of the different coverages and understanding that every single night you got to bring it as the superstar, as the leader of the team. You can't have games where you just decide to be passive and hope one of your teammates pick you up, especially on the road in a very decisive Game 5, where if it's tied at 2, the winner of Game 5 usually goes on to win the series. You got to come out and you got to be assertive. And he was a bit passive in Game 5. His teammates didn't come up big for him in that spot, and they got run out of the building against the Nuggets. And so he came out aggressive, and the rest of the team followed. And that's usually how it goes. When you're the leader of a team, when you're the best player and you come out and you assert yourself, that brings energy to the rest of the squad. I always tell you that when you're at home, the bench bums play better. And that's politically incorrect, right? To be nice, let's just call them the others, okay? But I prefer bench bums. The guys that, because not every guy that is a massive contributor comes off the bench, right? Let's just call them the others, right? Other guys are going to step up and play better when they're at home. And if you, as the leader, set the tone, they're going to follow. And that was an impressive showing. I think this has been one of the wackiest series in recent memory, because just when you think you've got it figured out, this series continues to prove we know nothing. After the first two games, we were convinced, oh my God, the Nuggets are done. They might get swept in this series. They got no answers for Minnesota's defense, their length, and Anthony Edwards' ability to score. They're in trouble. Charles Barkley went on to say that the Timberwolves own every advantage. The Nuggets don't have a single advantage in the series. They can't go to anybody and have a decisive advantage. And clearly, they took it personally, right? The old MJ adage. They took it personally, and then they went on to win 3 straight, and 2 of them in dominant fashion, to the point where you went, oh, okay, well, maybe they've got them figured out. Now they're going to win 4 straight and win the series. And then Minnesota goes home and says, not on my floor, and absolutely destroy the Nuggets. And now we're going into a Game 7 situation on Saturday night. I believe it's going to be Saturday. It could be Sunday. But we're going into a Game 7 situation on, my guess is going to be Saturday night. And Denver's going to be rocking, right? And they know the season's on the line and the fans are going to show up. And we'll see if Anthony Edwards can do what he did in, say, Game 2, when he went off, Game 1, when he went off, and the Nuggets had no answers, and they were able to win on the road in Denver. Let's see if he can recreate that again. But the series is going 7. And after the first 2 games, did you think it was going 7? After the last 3 games, did you think it was going 7? We have no idea what's going to happen. Anything could happen in this Game 7. Remember, the road team has won more games in this series than the home team has. So anything can happen in Game 7. So I can't wait. Bart Scott can't wait. Meanwhile, the Knicks series feels like it's going 7 as well. I expect Tyrese Halliburton to bounce back at home. I don't trust him. To me, as long as every Knick that's healthy right now stays healthy, I don't see them losing that series. Okay. We talked about that game, the last podcast episode, so I don't have a lot to add other than to let you know that I fully expect the Pacers to go home, defend their home court. I wouldn't be shocked if they lost that game, to be honest with you. But I expect Tyrese Halliburton, with the extra day off, to have people in his ear telling him, you can't be passive. We need you to shoot the basketball, because your aggressiveness opens up everything else for the others. You get into the lane, you get into the paint, you touch paint, guys are going to collapse open shots for other teammates. You have to be aggressive. You can't be giving it up 6 seconds into the shot clock as you cross half court and not get it back and just kind of camp, on the wing or camp in the corner and let somebody else go ISO, or let Pascal Siakam try to, post up on the block and go shoot a tough fadeaway. You can't just sit around and watch. And that happened in Game 1. What did he do? He came out, he shot the ball like 20-something times, scored 34 points. I think he shot the ball like 19 times, scored 34 points in the loss, but he was aggressive, and it gave them a chance to steal Game 2. We saw him be aggressive when they went home to Indiana, especially Game 3, and they won both of those games in Indiana. I expect him to bounce back at home, and I expect the Pacers to pick up that pace and force a Game 7, but I don't see them winning in New York, right? Meanwhile, Celtics took care of business. That was expected. I challenged them before the series started to sweep the Cavs. Like, we knew they were going to win the series in 5. Sweep them. I challenged them to sweep. They couldn't do it, but they got it done in 5. They did what they needed to do. Now they sit and await the winner of the Knicks Pacers series, and they're going to get a little bit of extra time off, and hopefully that helps Kristaps Porzingis continue to get back onto the court, which they will need him eventually, even if they don't need him necessarily for the Knicks series, because I think that's who they're ultimately going to play. They're going to need him in the NBA Finals. I think they need him against the Knicks, to be honest with you. They're such a scrappy bunch. They're probably going to need him in that series, but the time off definitely is going to help them. And then just like the Timberwolves, I want to see if OKC has it in them after going home in a decisive game 5 and showing their inexperience in their youth, and getting, pretty much handled at home. And this is what you worked for all season long, to have that decisive game 5 at home to give you an advantage there. And they weren't able to seize that opportunity because they're a young team. I mean, this is what I expected. They fought. Honestly, the series should be over right now. If Luka doesn't, if the Mavericks don't miss 12 free throws in game 4, this series is done, right? So in my mind, the Mavs are going to close them out in 6, but at home, which if you're Dallas, you don't want to go back to OKC having to win a game 7, even though you've proven twice already in the series that you're perfectly comfortable going to Oklahoma City and winning. Why even put yourself through that? Take care of business in game 6, close it out, and get ready for the Western Conference Finals, where you'll probably be taking on the Denver Nuggets. But, we'll see, right? Clearly, whomever you're going to have to play in that series, it's going to be a tough matchup. And you're going to be on the road to start the series off. So why not get a little bit of rest if you can, if you're the Dallas Mavericks? Luka's dealing with a little something. He's a little battered and bruised. Why not give yourself a little bit time extra to rest? So everything is kind of going true to form right now in the second round in terms of who's going to win the series. In my estimation, I predicted Dallas would win. I predicted Denver would win. I predicted the Celtics would win, and I predicted that the Knicks would win. And I said Knicks in 6. I said Nuggets in, I think I said 5 or 6. So clearly I was wrong about the amount of games. I might have even said 6 or 7. I don't remember I think I said 6. I didn't expect them to just mop the floor with Minnesota, but I don't think I expected it to go 7. So I don't think I had the amount of games there, but I still think Dallas or Denver's going to win the series, even though they're getting throttled as we speak. I felt like the Knicks were going to win in 6. I think they have a chance to do that, but I expect it to go 7 now, having watched the series and seen how things have gone. And I think I had Dallas in 6 or 7, and they have a chance to close them out in 6. I think I said 6 because if I'm Dallas, I don't want to go back to Oklahoma City for a game 7. Right. Even though I've already stated this earlier in the first round, no one has been more disrespectful on other teams' home floor in a game 7 than the Dallas Mavericks with Luka Doncic. So if they have to go to OKC, they're battle tested enough to go there and take care of business. Just ask the Phoenix Suns. Right. So all in all, everything looks like it's going on schedule to this point. We'll see if someone throws us a curveball here over the next 3 days, because we'll be done with the second round by Sunday. Every single series would have met its conclusion. And by the time we start next week, we'll be talking about game 1s in all of the conference finals. So we'll be down to 4 teams after Sunday. We may know some of those teams after tomorrow. So we'll see what happens. But all in all, wow. So the final score was 115-70. Yikes. 45-point blowout. Ouch. That is brutal. But it is what it is. It only counts as one, as a wise man once told me. So it feels like a lot worse, but a lot more, but it only counts as one. So HTT Carson says Chris Paul cuts the lead to 42. Yeah. That one was hilarious because one of my best friends is a Phoenix Suns fan, and it couldn't have gone any worse for him. So that one was pretty hilarious to me. But 45-point ass whooping. Good thing for Denver is you get to play another one, right? You get to play one more. So Jamal Murray's going to have to play better. He was awful tonight. And it is what it is. You went on the road. You tried to close the show. You couldn't do it. This is why you lift all them weights, right? This is why you play the regular season. And this is why you try to be the highest seed you can possibly be for these exact moments. Now you get this game 7, this all important, win or go home game 7 on your home floor if you're the defending champion Denver Nuggets. And the good thing about it is, if you take care of business here, if you're Denver, OKC is probably going to be eliminated Now you're the de facto 1 seed in the West at that point. Now you have home court advantage throughout the rest of the Western Conference playoffs. So you just got to take care of business one more time in this really tough, grueling series against a game Minnesota Timberwolves team. We'll see if they're able to do that. Let me set the table right now and say that I promised you a special guest on the podcast tonight. And the interview went so well. We ended up talking for a lot longer than I had anticipated. So in lieu of that, I'm going, and I was kind of, having a back and forth discussion in my mind as to how I wanted to do this, because I already knew this was going to be a longer podcast episode just based off of the fact that we're going through the schedule. So it wouldn't have made sense to try to feed you that portion of the podcast and that interview. So what I'm ultimately going to do is I'm going to turn that into a bonus episode, and I'm going to split it into 2 parts because it's a pretty long interview. I may not split it into 2 parts. I got to decide how I want to do it. I may split it into 2 parts. I may just give you the whole thing and allow you to consume it all at once. I will say this. If you want to know who the interview is with, go to my MusicHead University channel tomorrow at noon. I'll be uploading a video then, and a part of the interview is going to be on that channel. So that'll give you almost like a sort of a preview, if you will, of what's to come. It was a great interview. You're going to enjoy it. I'm going to be honest with you, and I'm going to be upfront with you. Basketball dominated the conversation. So if you're looking for a ton of football conversation, there's not a lot of it to be had. There's a little bit, all right, but I'm just going to be honest. We got to talking ball, and boy, it was so much fun that we were talking about it forever. So I had so much fun, and I hope you'll enjoy the interview as well. But you'll be seeing that either over the course of the weekend, or I'll just give it to you in one big dose. So stay tuned for that. But in any event, let's get to the reason you showed up tonight, which is the NFL schedule release that was yesterday. Every team schedule has been released to the masses, and I must say, the schedule release purge is real. I saw so many crazy takes over the last 24 hours. You know how many teams are supposed to go 14-3 according to their fan base? I mean, the shit is wild, right? Boy, it is amazing. I got my purge out of my system. I'm back to my 7-win, plateau. I'm right where I need to be, right in that 7, win range or so. Maybe 8 if the ball bounces our way, but I'm more in that 7-win range. I got all of that shit out of my system yesterday. I was talking crazy, 9, possibly 10. I'm back to where I need to be. The purge is over, and my head is back to being level, right? We're back to 7 wins where we belong. So we'll see what happens. But anyway, let's get into the gem dropping session, shall we? Yeah, I think we shall. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind, let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, Louie T double E. Let me open you up. Get you thinking a little bit. So we're going to jump right into this thing. And if you want to see the NFL schedule in all of its splendor right in your face, this is the best way to do it. I do it this way every year. Whoever created the NFL schedule grid is a genius. Einstein level type shit, right? This is the best way to take in the NFL schedule. It's the most efficient way to take it in because everything you need is right in front of you. The color-coded games help you to see what's prime time, and it makes it so easy for you to identify how many primetime games does this team have, or how many games, does this team have, and what kind of a game is it? And so this is a great layout, and one that I prefer to look at when we talk about everybody's schedule. And so that's what we're going to do. So the first thing that I always take a look at is primetime games. You know, I'm huge and big on primetime affairs because you're forcing us to watch a game when you put it on primetime. We don't have a choice. Clearly, you don't have to watch. But if you're a football junkie like myself, I always tell you this, I'm going to watch because we only get 18 weeks of this in the regular season. And then you get, you know, the 4 weeks or so in the postseason. I'm going to watch because once it's done, then it's done. Like now you're trying to relegate me to UFL football. I can't do it. I'm sorry. You know, there are a lot of people that enjoy that. Good for you. Once this is over, I got nothing. Okay. So I'm going to watch. So I would prefer if you didn't give me some trash. So the primetime games are huge. And, you know, I always talk about how you have to earn the right to be on primetime television. The NFL is no dummy. They understand how this works. You put on the, you know, Tennessee Titans and the Carolina Panthers, and you're going to draw the lowest ratings of the season. Nobody wants to see that. They know that, and so they're not going to put that game on television. So you have to earn the right to be on primetime television. And so the breakdown goes as follows in terms of the amount of primetime games. So remember, the maximum amount of primetime games used to be 5, right? That was before the season was extended to 17 games in 18 weeks. So now that there's an additional game, there's an additional primetime slot that teams can have. So now the number is 6 in terms of primetime games. Now, you'll see some teams on this list that, technically speaking, by NFL terms and by network terms, prime time is when you're on at night in one of those prime time slots, 7, 8, 9 o'clock. That's considered prime time. 10 o'clock because of, you know, the West Coast, but you have to be playing at night for it to be considered prime time. Teams like the Chiefs are on like 8 or 9 times in general on national television where everyone can watch all at once. To me, that's prime time. I don't give a shit if the game's at 12 noon, like on Thanksgiving when the game starts at 12:30. That's prime time. No other game is on. That's a prime time game for me. Okay. I know it's not technically a prime time game, but you're on and there's no other game on. That's prime time to me. Okay. There are a lot of teams that have a lot of primetime games. So let's go through the list real quick. Teams with 6 primetime games. There are 3 of them. As one would expect, the New York Jets are one of them. Aaron Rodgers, that whole dynamic. And I love that the NFL had one of their schedule makers come out and essentially say, hey, look, the Jets owe us a solid, man. They screwed us royally last year. It reminded me of when Jimmy Garoppolo got hurt with the 49ers the year after he got traded for, and the 49ers went like 5-0 down the stretch with him at quarterback as the starter. And so everybody was all excited. Oh, the 49ers are back. Jimmy Garoppolo's the savior. They put him on primetime 5 times. He got hurt in week 2. And we were stuck with CJ Beathard and Nick Mullins the rest of the season. It was brutal. The most recent, I think, debacle, though, the biggest one was the Broncos 2 years ago. Russell Wilson's first year in Denver. And it unlike most situations where it goes awry, where you put a team on 5 times on primetime and they don't live up to the billing, is usually because their quarterback gets injured. He didn't get injured. They just stunk. They were just awful. And it was painful to watch. They came out and said, hey, Aaron Rodgers and the Jets, they owe us one. So they put these bastards on 6 times. We're going to go through their schedule here in a bit. San Francisco, obviously NFC champions, one of the quote-unquote blue bloods of the NFL. And technically, Like when you think of blue bloods, you think of some of the first teams, you think of the Giants, you think of the Bears, think of those types of teams. But the 49ers to me are one of the blue bloods because they've won, just as much as anyone in the league, and they win every year. So they've earned the right to be on 6 times. They've been, as I mentioned, similar to Kansas City, they've been to the NFC Championship game 3 out of the last 4 years. They've been to the Super Bowl 2 times in the last 4 years. So they've earned the right to be where they are. Or is it 4 times in the last 5 years? And they've been to the Super Bowl twice in that 5-year stretch. I believe that's what it is. 19, I think, is when they went to the Super Bowl. 20, they had injuries. 21, they went to the NFC Championship game, lost to the Rams. 22, they went to the NFC Championship game, lost to the Eagles. And in 23, they went to the Super Bowl again. So 4 times in 5 years, they've been to the NFC Championship game, and they've been to the Super Bowl twice. So they've earned the right to be on 6 times. Dallas, America's team, Jers boys. What more can I say? It's Dallas. They're a massive draw. This is what they do. As much as I can't stand them, they move the needle. They move the needle, and they're good every year. They still have Dak Prescott. As long as he's healthy, they'll probably be good again. They make for great theater because whether they win or they lose, they're going to be the topic of discussion. No matter what. They can be on a bye week and they'll still lead off most television shows during the season. What did the Cowboys do during their bye week? Did they lose ground? Like they're going to find a way to talk about Dallas. So they're a needle mover no matter who they're playing. You want to bring up a bad team, put them against Dallas. And it'll move the needle, right? Indianapolis doesn't move the needle for you. Put them against Dallas on primetime. They did that, 2 years ago? They put Indianapolis on primetime against Dallas. It's going to move the needle. All right, so those are the teams with 6. We got a slew of teams with 5. Starting off with the Super Bowl defending, the 2-time Super Bowl defending champion, Kansas City Chiefs. They got 5, but really the Chiefs are on 8 times. Let's count the color on the Chiefs real quick because I don't think anybody has more color than Kansas City this year. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games of color for the Chiefs. Let's see what the Jets have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I think the Chiefs are going to lead the pack with 8 games of color on this sheet. Let's see what Dallas has. They may be right there too, though, because they got Thanksgiving, and it's nothing for Dallas to be on an additional Thursday as well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yep. No, the Chiefs 8 games of color, I think, is going to lead the pack. It was crazy because every time a game leaked prior to the schedule being released, it was Kansas City, and it was them playing somebody in a primetime spot, essentially, or them playing in it like the game of the week. And then when the schedule got put out officially, I looked and I'm like, oh, they're playing Kansas City. I'm like, damn, well, how many times is Kansas City in a primetime slot, right? Or playing someone in an abnormal slot, like a Black Friday, for instance. They're playing the Raiders on Black Friday, right? That's technically not a primetime game. It's on at 3 o'clock in the afternoon or whatever it is. But it's primetime to me. There's no other game on, right? So anyway, I digress. So they've got 5. Do the Chiefs. Don't buy the hype. It's really 8. Buffalo, they have 5. They're the Bills. You get it, right? It's Josh Allen. It's the Bills. Why not? Green Bay, Jordan Love's run to the postseason and going to Dallas and destroying the Cowboys and almost upsetting the 49ers has led to the Packers being a 5-star team, as I like to call it. The Packers are another one of those teams that when they're good, they're going to be on a bunch. And so we'll see if they're going to be good or not. Detroit obviously earned their stripes doing what they did last year. Jared Goff, we talked about that last podcast episode. Massive deal for him. So They pretty much brought everybody back, was able to retain their offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson, kept their defensive coordinator, Aaron Glenn. They got their quarterback. They got their receiver back. They re-signed everybody. They feel good about who they are, where they are. And that's a good football team right now. And so they've got 5 games. Again, they were literally 1 or 2 passes that were dropped and maybe 1 or 2 decisions to go for it when they probably should have settled for, points. Whatever the case may be, we could argue about what they should or shouldn't have done. If Reynolds catches the football on those 4th downs and that 4th down and then that 3rd down, they probably win that game. So Detroit has 5. Cincinnati has 5. If Joe Burrow is upright, then they deserve 5 games on primetime. If Joe Burrow is not playing, then the NFL was duped once again. Hopefully they aren't wrong about Joe Burrow and his health, because that's the only thing that's going to stop them from being any good, right? They're going to be good if Burrow's healthy. So they got 5. Baltimore, we know Lamar Jackson defending MVP of the league. So they're a draw. They're entertaining to watch. You get it, right? Philadelphia, same deal. Just like Dallas, they're really good just about every year. And there's an East Coast bias. And the Eagles, if they're good, are going to be on primetime a bunch of times. And they deserve it. They're a good football team. Dolphins, again, they've been really good the last 2 years or so. They've been in the playoffs each of the last 2 seasons. Why not? Tyreek Hill's a great draw. Why not? And the Rams, they kind of stick out a bit. Like, hey, what are you like? After we talk about the Rams, I'm going to go back and we're going to look at all the teams that are 5-star and then the rare, 6 primetime performance teams, right? The Rams are the one team that I go, hey, wait a minute. What are you doing here, right? Sort of like back in the day when they would go, what are those? What are you doing here? I don't think they belong here. Whether Stafford's healthy or not, they have no business being on primetime 5 times. 4 or 3 would have suited me just fine. I don't need the Rams 5 times. They're not that entertaining of a team. They're good, but just as good as they can be, they can easily suck too. They're one Matthew Stafford injury away from being hot ass garbage. Hot ass trash. But they got 5 prime timers. They made it to the playoffs last year. So let's go through the teams with 6 and 5 primetime games. 5 and 6. Jets, San Francisco, Dallas. Of those 3 teams, 2 made the playoffs last year, and Aaron Rodgers is on the Jets, and they're a Super Bowl contending team with Aaron Rodgers. So you get it. With all the 5 primetime team games, the 5-star teams, Kansas City, Buffalo, Green Bay, Detroit, Cincinnati, Baltimore, Philadelphia, Miami, and the Rams. What do they all have in common? They all made the playoffs last year except for Cincinnati, and just like the Jets, if Joe Burrow's healthy, they're a Super Bowl contender. So you see the theme there with the teams with 6 and 5 primetime games. They all have quarterbacks that you respect, okay? Stafford, Tua, Hurts, Jackson, Burrow, Goff, Love, Allen, Mahomes, Rodgers, Purdy, Prescott. You don't have to love them, but those teams win ball games and those quarterbacks get results. So that's the name of the game. Do you have a quarterback that can get it done, that may be a draw? Do you win football games? Are you entertaining to watch? These are all things they take into consideration. All of those teams fit the criteria, check off more than one box. That's why they're there, right? Now you get to the teams with 4 primetime games. Houston, Pittsburgh, Tampa Bay, Seattle, Atlanta, Cleveland. Again, you're talking about teams that made the postseason a year ago, with the exception of Pittsburgh, Seattle, and Atlanta. But all the other 3 teams, Houston, Tampa Bay, and Cleveland all made the postseason last year. And when you look at all of those teams, again, their quarterbacks are quarterbacks that you respect, or at least had respectable seasons last year, right? Houston, CJ Stroud coming off one of the greatest rookie seasons we've ever seen from a quarterback. Made the playoffs, won a playoff game. The Steelers, they went out and got Russell Wilson. Don't know who's going to start for them. More likely than not, it's going to be Russell Wilson. But even if he's not in there, Justin Fields is in there. And oh, by the way, the Steelers are one of the best draws in the NFL. Wherever the Steelers go, numbers follow, just like Dallas. So they're going to be in the mix if they're any good. They should be somewhat good. We don't know how good, but they're the Steelers. That's all you need to know. Tampa Bay, Baker Mayfield played well last year. We'll see what he does for an encore, but they went to the playoffs, won a playoff game, almost won in the divisional round. So you get it, right? Seattle, they didn't make the playoffs last year. Not sure how the Seahawks feel about Geno Smith. They trade for Sam Howell. We'll see how it goes for them. But all in all, Seattle, good football team. I think it's more about who's in their division than who they are as a team. I think it's a little bit of who they are, but I think it's a lot to do with, hey, you play in a division with both the Rams, who have 5, and the 49ers, who have 6. One of those games for each of those teams, I guarantee you, is against Seattle, right? So that's going to put you on prime time. Then you're going to have your own prime time games. And so I think Seattle probably, more likely than not, when we look at their schedule, my guess is, and I haven't looked at their schedule, my guess is they're riding the coattails of other teams on primetime. It's not like they're the main attraction. Like, you're not going to see Seattle and Jacksonville on primetime. I say that and watch that be one of the primetime games, right? But no, they're going to be playing San Francisco. They're going to be playing the Rams. They're going to be playing the Raiders or something like that, where they're the tag-along. They're the other team in the game. They just happen to be playing a team that the NFL wants to showcase on a primetime stage. And, oh, Seattle's playing them this week, so Seattle ends up being on. I don't think they're on because the NFL thinks highly of the Seahawks. If you ask me who doesn't belong in this group, I'd tell you it's Seattle, because we really don't know. They got a brand new head coach. It's the changing of the guard in Seattle. We have no idea what the Seahawks are going to be this year. They really don't belong here. And they didn't make the playoffs last year. But we'll see. Atlanta, clearly they're here because of Kirk Cousins. They're here because of Kirk Cousins. He gives them instant star power. You don't have to love Kirk, but Kirk with the big chain, he's a marketing beast, right? He's a draw. Say what you want. Kirk Cousins is a draw. And clearly that is shown by Atlanta having 4 primetime games. And then the Browns, Deshaun Watson, look, he didn't play a bunch last year, but when he played, he was effective. They won. And again, the Browns made the playoffs last year. So again, you can say what you want, but they win games, and Deshaun Watson is still viewed as a really good quarterback. But I think he's starting to lose a lot of the luster that he built up. That equity that he built up in Houston starting to fade away. He's going to have to play better this year. All right. They may have won games last year, but no one was impressed with the way he played, to be honest. Teams with 3 primetime games: Giants, Bears, Chargers, Saints. This is a weird group here because none of them, to me, other than the Chargers, I actually thought you could have swapped out Seattle with the Chargers, given the Chargers with Jim Harbaugh, that's a storyline, and Justin Herbert. I thought you could have given the Chargers 4 and took Seattle out of the 4 line and put them at 3, and it would have made more sense. And I wouldn't have even blinked. But the Chargers seem like the only team that belongs here. The Giants are here because they're the Giants. The Giants suck. They stink. Their quarterback situation stinks. Nobody wants to see Drew Lock. No one wants to see Daniel Jones. And frankly, nobody thinks the Giants are going to be very good this year. So why they have 3 games? The reason the Giants always have 3 games. They're the Giants. When we talk about blue bloods, that's who we're talking about. We're talking about teams like the Bears, like the Giants, like the Packers. Those are technically blue bloods. The Giants and the Bears in particular, they're 2 of the oldest franchises in the NFL. So when you think about a team that's just going to be on because they're going to be on, you're talking about a team. And again, East Coast bias, but the Giants are one of those teams. Okay, there's no reason for the Giants to have 3 primetime games. And again, some of that, similar to what I said about Seattle, some of that is the Giants being carried by the fact that you play in a division with Philadelphia and Dallas. That helps too. I guarantee you, one, if not 2 of those games that they have on primetime have to do with one of those 2 teams, if not 2 of them, right? I know they play Dallas on Thanksgiving. I don't think the NFL considers that a primetime game. So technically, the Giants probably have 4. Let's see what their color looks like. The Giants, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So technically, the Giants have 6 in terms of color. Now, that Week 17 game, same could be said with Kansas City. No, you can't say the same thing with Kansas City. Even though they could flex that game, they're not going to flex that game. The Week 17 game, which could be Saturday or Sunday, is not really technically a primetime game. It's just if the game features 2 good teams or 2 teams battling for playoff spots, then they're going to make it a Saturday game instead of a Sunday game. So that one doesn't count. So you take that one away from the Giants. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's 5 games of color, which is a lot for a team that last year wasn't very good and doesn't have a quarterback and doesn't really have a reason why you would want to watch them. I see Dallas there in color once. I see Cincinnati there. I see Pittsburgh. I see Dallas again. That's on Thanksgiving, though, so that one doesn't technically count as a primetime game. And then, so that's an international game. So the color probably is more, true for them. It's really 3 games. 4 if you count the Thanksgiving game. 4 if you count the Thanksgiving, which I do. So it's really 4 for the Giants. But anyway, I digress. The Bears, again, blue blood, right? Another one of these teams, if they're half decent, if we think they have a chance, they're going to get 3 right off the rip. And with Caleb Williams showing up, the number 1 overall pick, it just adds intrigue to a Bears team that already is, again, one of the NFL blue bloods. And they're probably playing the Packers. They seem to play the Packers on primetime television at least once. No matter how bad the Bears are, they're going to play the Packers. Let's see if that holds true again this year. Nope, no Green Bay game. They spared us this year. Yeah, no Green Bay games highlighted. Jacksonville, Houston. Jacksonville is an international game. Detroit. So Detroit took their place. That's what it was. Detroit, and then they got Minnesota too. So Detroit is the one that took the place of Green Bay, or you could use Minnesota in that capacity. But I think Detroit took their place. And you got to remember, Detroit is the Don Dada in that division now, not Green Bay. And so I have to rewire my brain. But nonetheless, they got 3 primetime games. I don't have an issue with that. People want to see Caleb Williams, which is why I have a problem with the Giants. Nobody wants to see any of their quarterbacks. At least people want to see Caleb Williams. The Chargers, I already said they could have had 4, and I wouldn't have thought twice about it. I wouldn't have batted an eye. Shocked at the fact that they only have 3, to be honest with you, but they're going to make them earn it. I don't have a problem with that either. But they got Justin Herbert, that's star power at the quarterback position, and they got Jim Harbaugh. I just thought that would have counted for more than 3 primetimers. And then you're in the division with the Chiefs and the Raiders, because the Raiders, whether you like it or not, the Raiders end up being a draw because it's Vegas, right? I think that luster is starting to wear off, and being that they don't have a quarterback now, they're going to suffer, which is why the Raiders aren't on this 3 line, because generally the Raiders have 3 because you just want to go to Vegas, right? Saints, to me, them and the Giants don't belong here. Like, who wants to watch Derek Carr? Who wants to watch the New Orleans Saints? Drew Brees isn't walking through that door. Sean Payton is no longer the coach there. Why do I want to watch New Orleans on primetime again? Please remind me why the Saints are an interesting team to watch. Please help me, because I don't have an answer as to why they have 3 primetime games. I'm baffled. Again, that was the most baffling line of all of the lines, was the 3 line. because the Giants don't belong there. The Chargers don't belong there. They should have more, to be honest with you. And the Saints have no business having 3 primetime games either. So this was the most baffling line. The 2 line reads as follows: Minnesota, Vegas, Washington, Denver, Jacksonville. This is probably the most accurate line because Minnesota's going to have a rookie quarterback. Vegas doesn't have a quarterback. Washington has a rookie quarterback. Denver has a rookie quarterback. And Jacksonville is Jacksonville, right? If Jacksonville packed up their things and moved to St. Louis, would anybody notice? Like, I know that's very disrespectful of the Jacksonville Jaguar fans that exist, but there honestly could be more Jacksonville Jaguar fans over in London than there are in Jacksonville. Again, another slap in the face of Jacksonville Jaguar fans, but it's just how I feel. And Trevor Lawrence didn't have a great year last year. You know, he was banged up. He took a step back. Had he played the way he played the year prior, they would have had 3 or 4. He didn't. They missed the playoffs, so they're down to the 2 line. It makes sense. So that line is true to form. That's the way it should be. No objections there. The 1 line is as follows: Indy, New England, Arizona, Tennessee. I'm actually surprised that Arizona got 1. I get it. They weren't good last year, but Kyler Murray missed the first 8 or 9 games of the season, and he's still a dynamic quarterback. He's still fun to watch. I just would have thought that off the strength of Kyler Murray and his presence, they would have gotten an additional primetimer. They would have been on twice. That's the only one that kind of sticks out there. Indy is boring. They're always boring, and they haven't been relevant since Andrew Luck. So until they change that narrative, you don't really want to watch the Indianapolis Colts. And generally, when you get a team like Indy, you're going to pit them against another AFC South team so you can kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Let's see if that's what they did this year. Same thing with Tennessee, right? Tennessee, now that there's no Derrick Henry, there's definitely no reason to watch, right? Let's see. Tennessee got Miami. Let's see what they did with Houston. Okay, Houston's along for the ride with the Jets. So I told you, if you want to put a bad team on, attach them to a good team. Attach them to a Dallas, attach them to the Jets, attach them to Kansas City, and we'll watch. So they've learned their lesson, because usually they kill 2 birds with 1 stone, and I thought they were going to try the old okie doke. Tennessee at Jacksonville, and that's how you get rid of both of them, and now you don't have to deal with either of them the rest of the season. They said, nah, we got one better than that, because nobody's watching that game. So if we want to keep the ratings at a respectable level, just attach them to Aaron Rodgers and the Jets, or attach them to, in the case of Tennessee, Miami. Remember, that was one of the most entertaining games last year. Miami Dolphins hosting the Tennessee Titans. Will Levis led that improbable comeback. They were down 13 with like 3 minutes to go in the game, and he brought them back, scored 2 touchdowns in the waning moments to lead them to a come-from-behind victory. So I guess they said, hey, let's run that one back. That one wasn't bad. Okay, we'll see if they can recreate that magic again. But anyway, I digress. New England stinks. And because Jacoby Brissett is going to start for them, nobody wants to see that shit. Nobody wanted to watch the Patriots last year. Nobody wants to watch the Patriots this year. They're one of the most boring teams a season ago. That's probably going to continue until Drake May gets out there, and they're not going to throw him out there, nor should they, until they feel like he's ready. So Jacoby Brissett plays a boring style of football. The Patriots are a boring team. They're where they're supposed to be. And again, we've already talked about the Tennessee Titans. That division just reeks of boredom. And it always has. I always joke that when the playoffs get started, you bet your bottom dollar that the very first game of the postseason, and tell me I'm wrong, go look at the last 20 years of postseason football, and you tell me who's the first game that kicks off Wild Card Weekend. That first game on Saturday at 4:30, you already know. Whoever won the AFC South is kicking off the playoffs because they're getting the worst game out of the way. It's going to be the game that has the least amount of viewers. It's going to do the worst in terms of drawing in viewers because the AFC South is just that type of division. Houston is looking to change that with CJ Stroud, which is why they got 4. But we'll see. Two of the 4 teams have 1, and Jacksonville has 2. So that tells you all you need to know about that division. So, and then the Carolina Panthers have 0. It couldn't have happened to a better owner. Boy, does David Tepper stink as an owner already. The stench of him permeates the entire NFL already. And his team has it emits those vibes. You know, his stench is so wretched that it bleeds onto the field. It fumigates the field, and his team stinks right now, and so they got nothing. The NFL, that's so disrespectful because the NFL, and I'm pretty sure there's some color for Carolina somewhere, right? Yeah, they got the Giants on an international game, so there's that, right? But that's really disrespectful when they say, "Look, you're so bad, we can't even fit you in on a Thursday." Remember, let's call it 7 years ago, the NFL declared that every team needs to be showcased. We're going to make sure every team plays on Thursday Night Football at least. They said, to hell with that shit. You're not even worth a Thursday nighter, bro. You just take your ass over to London, get you some exposure there, and we'll call it even. Yikes! All right, so let's go through the schedule now that you have a working knowledge of what the prime timers look like. So we start with the Arizona Cardinals and their schedule at Buffalo week 1, Rams week 2 at home. So right away you see that they got 3 out of their first 4 at home and 3 in a row at the crib, which is an anomaly. You rarely play 3 straight games at home, but the Arizona Cardinals do that. They start on the road at Buffalo and they go home for the Rams, Detroit, and Washington. And then at San Francisco, at Green Bay. Can we just stop right there and say that's a brutal start to the season? The only non-playoff team from a season ago is Washington. You got division winner Buffalo, a Rams team that came within a point of beating the Detroit Lions, who represented the NFC along with the 49ers in the championship game. You have the Lions, who went to the championship game and won their division, by the way. You got the 49ers, who won their division, and of course they play in the NFC West, so they know them. And then Green Bay, who made it to the divisional round and came within one possession of upsetting the San Francisco 49ers and making it to the NFC Championship game. If that's not brutal, I don't know what is. And you're telling me you couldn't have given Arizona in one of those 6 games you couldn't have given them a prime timer there with all that firepower there? Buffalo, Detroit, San Francisco, Green Bay. You couldn't have given them one prime timer there? And then the one prime timer they have, right? Because we talked about this already. They got one. It's a flexible Monday night game. You see that $sign there that's next to the Chargers name? That means that game can be flexed out. Meaning, if those 2 teams suck ass, they're like, yeah, let's put another game in there. Ouch. So, that's, or is that, no. You know what that means? That means that it's a doubleheader. Excuse me. Because you're not swapping out games in week 7. I think they start doing that at week 10. Or is it 9? I see a lot of asterisks. Shit, no. We got asterisks in week 7. So no. We got an asterisk in week 5 with the Steelers and the Cowboys. So all of those games are subject to change. So they're not swapping out Steelers, Cowboys. Are you kidding me? That's going to be the highest rated game of the season, probably. or at least the highest rated Sunday night game of the season. Are you kidding me? Let the Steelers get off to a fast start. Same with Dallas. Yeah, right. Anyway, so they got the Chargers on a Monday night in Week 7. That's a doubleheader. A lot of doubleheaders this year too. We'll talk about that as we go through the schedule. At Miami, Chicago at home, Jets at home. So after 3 straight home games in weeks 2 through 4, they then have 3 out of 4 on the road, which you would expect. And then Chicago at home, Jets at home, and then they have a Week 11 bye. Come off the bye, and you're at Seattle, at Minnesota. So you play Seattle twice in a 3-week span, right? A little bit of a quirk there on the schedule. New England, Carolina, at the Rams. That game could be Saturday or Sunday, and then you finish up with San Francisco at home. So that's a pretty tough schedule, if I'm being honest with you. It's a brutal start, but it doesn't let up. Chargers and Dolphins and Bears are going to be competitive. Jets, Seattle in your division. Minnesota, don't really know what the Vikings are going to be, but Seattle again. Patriots, it eases up. It eases up. You got a stretch there of Seattle, Minnesota, Seattle, and Patriots, Panthers. That's the easy portion of the schedule, right? If there is a such thing. We don't know who's going to be what, right? But on paper, that's going to be the easy portion of the schedule. And I don't call Seattle easy because that's a family affair, right? It's family business, but you get my drift. Compared to the rest of the schedule, that's pretty tough. So one prime timer, and I think the problem with Arizona is before they even get started, their season's done. At Buffalo, Rams at the crib, Lions at the crib, Washington at the crib. I mean, you could beat Washington, but you're probably not beating Buffalo. They're not going to be favored in any of the first 6 games except home for Washington. That's the only game they'll be favored in. So, you go to the Atlanta Falcons, and this is for all of you Kirk Cousins haters out there. This is the Kirk Cousins effect. If Derek Carr had gone to the Atlanta Falcons, I guarantee you they don't have 4 primetime games. Okay, guarantee you. Let's see how much color they have first and foremost. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, and that 5th one doesn't count because it's either going to be a Saturday game against Washington or it's going to be a regular Sunday, standard Sunday game. So they got 4 games. So their color is pretty true to form. But I guarantee you, if Kirk Cousins isn't there, if you swap out Kirk Cousins for Derek Carr, we're not having this conversation. Pittsburgh Week 1 at home, at Philadelphia Week 2 on a Monday night. That should be interesting. Kirk doesn't do well on Monday night at Philadelphia in that Week 2 spot specifically. Like, I don't know why they continue to set Kirk up in that manner. I think they did that to him twice now. This is the 3rd time, as a matter of fact. Correct me if I'm wrong. 3 years ago, they played the Eagles, I want to say, on a Monday night. I want to say it was a doubleheader, and they got their asses whooped. And it's not like Philadelphia dominated them. Kirk turned the shit over like 5 times, threw like 3 interceptions. It was terrible. But they only lost like 24-7 or something like that. That was 3 years ago in Philadelphia. I remember, I think, because Meek Mill was there sitting in like the front row of stands, and Darius Slay caught a pick, and I think he gave him the ball, or was it Floyd Mayweather? Somebody was there. I want to say it was Meek. Then last year, so 2 years ago, that was. Then last year, they played him on Thursday Night Football Week 2. I remember that vividly because I was in South Beach with my boys, and we were hanging, and that game was on, and I was talking shit to Eagles fans. I told y'all about that on the podcast. I told y'all that I was I had a couple of drinks, and it was a flock of Eagles fans that were having a birthday party, and they were lit. I was really risking it all. I really was. If they were like ready to fight, my boy did not have my back. That could have got real ugly fast. The friend that I needed to have with me, he wasn't with me yet. He didn't come till the very next day. So it was just me and my other friend. He would probably let me get my ass whooped, to be honest with you. Anyway, now that I'm thinking about it, that was not smart on my part, but I ain't no punk, you know. Bitch, my mama ain't no hoe, bitch. My daddy ain't no hoe, bitch. My sister ain't no hoe. They try to play me like a hoe. I ain't no hoe. All right. Anyway. And now this year they're playing Philadelphia in week 2. We'll see if there is a different result with Kirk in Atlanta than when he was in Minnesota. Now, that was actually a competitive game last year. They didn't play any defense, and they turned it over too much. Justin Jefferson had to fumble at the 1 yard line, and I think there was another back-breaking turnover that really hurt him. But anyway, following week, you're on Sunday Night Football against the Kansas City Chiefs. So we're getting Kirk early and often, 2 times in the first 3 weeks. And they start off with some crazy home cooking. 4 out of Atlanta's first 5 games are at home. These are some crazy anomalies, guys. 3 straight, just like Arizona had 3 straight home games. 3 straight home games for the Falcons. I don't know what it is about Atlanta at night in the Dome, but I like it a lot. I used to like it even more when they played in the Dome with the turf that was smooth. The pellets aren't as dope, but something about Atlanta at night, I dig it. So I'm looking forward to that Kansas City game in week 3. They also have Tampa Bay on Thursday Night Football in week 5. So in the first 5 weeks, Kirk Cousins is on your telly 3 times. That's the Kirk Cousins effect, folks. Say what you want about Kirk. 4 out of their first 5 are at home, and their first and 3 of those teams are playoff teams from a season ago: Philadelphia, Kansas City, and Tampa Bay. So, and 2 of those games are within the division: New Orleans and Tampa Bay back to back. So it's a doable stretch, but they're going to be tested early. We're going to find out a lot about Atlanta, specifically the first 3 weeks of the season, because Pittsburgh at home, at Philadelphia, and home for Kansas City. We're going to find out a lot about the Atlanta Falcons in the first 3 weeks of the season. Week 6 at Carolina. So 3 straight games against divisional opponents. You play each of the teams in your division once. So that's interesting there. And you're done with Tampa Bay in week 8. So at Carolina, home for Seattle, at Tampa Bay. You gotta know that there's going to be a brutal stretch of road games coming at some point, because you had 4 out of your first 5 at home, 3 in a row at one. You got to be coming with a 4 out of 5 on the road stretch somewhere in here to even the score. Dallas week 9 at home, at New Orleans, at Denver, then the bye week. There it is. At New Orleans, at Denver, bye. Come off the bye, home for the Chargers, at Minnesota, at Vegas. So you finish up with 5 out of your final 7 on the road, which you knew that, or excuse me, 5 out of 7 on the road, and then you finish up at home against Carolina. But prior to that week 18 matchup, 5 out of 7 games on the road, 4 out of 5 on the road. There's a bye in there, so that helps. But you knew that was coming at some point. So when you look at the totality of this schedule, you play in a trash division. So the schedule's not going to be tough. You play the NFC East, so that makes it a little bit tougher. You play the AFC West, that makes it a little tough as well. So it's not an easy schedule, but because you play in the worst division, arguably in football, it takes a little bit of the sting off of the schedule for the Falcons. Ravens, and just so we're clear, the stretch that I think is going to define their season are the first 3 games. We're going to find out a lot about them, but they can overcome that because you then play every team in your division, the next 3 weeks after the first 3 games. But it's this stretch here of at Tampa, Dallas at home, at New Orleans, and then Denver. So I'll take it a step further. Weeks 4 through 10 are going to define their season, because you're playing 5 of your 6 division games in weeks 4 through 10. New Orleans in week 4, Tampa in week 5, Carolina in week 6, Tampa in week 8, and the Saints in week 10. You're done with Tampa and New Orleans by week 10. And you got Carolina week 18. So you're going to have to do damage in the division early if you're Atlanta. All right. Baltimore. See, they were a 5-piece, right? Let's check their color on them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So they have 7 games on 7 color games. So while they have 5 prime timers, like the Christmas Day game, it's a day game, but it's still prime time. There's no other game on at that time slot on Christmas. And then the other game is a week 16 Saturday game, probably the early Saturday game. So it's not technically at night. Let's see what else they got. They got a Sunday night, a Monday night, a Thursday. Yeah. So that other game against Pittsburgh is a week 16 Saturday game. It's probably during the day. So but that's still prime time to me. So they really got a 7-piece. At KC, we know that's the first game of the season to kick off the 2024 regular season. Home for Vegas, at Dallas, home for Buffalo, at Cincinnati. Yikes. Let's stop right there. Damn. The NFL ain't playing around with some of these teams at the beginning of the season. Zoinks! At Kansas City. Okay, home for Vegas. You should take care of business there. At Dallas, tough. Home for Buffalo, tough. At Cincinnati, tough. Ouch. So 3 of your first 5 are on the road, and they're all on the road against playoff teams from a season ago. All right. With the exception of Cincinnati, and we already know what that is with Joe Burrow back in the lineup. So that's a hell of a start. And then you got Buffalo at home, and they're no slouch, obviously, as we know. Then you're home for Washington. You're at Tampa Bay. You're at Cleveland. You're home for Denver. You're home for Cincinnati. So it lightens up after the first 5 with Washington, Tampa. Again, Tampa's no slouch, and that's a prime timer on a Monday night. Boy, I'm looking forward to that game against Kansas City and Buffalo. Those are both technically Kansas City is a Sunday night game, but it's played on a Thursday in week 1. Buffalo's a Sunday night game in week 4, and then at Tampa is a Monday night game. I think we got a Tampa-Baltimore primetime Monday night game, as a matter of fact. I think it was 2 years ago we got that game. And they're running that back. I think that's what we got. And they're running that back. Brady was the quarterback then, though. At Cleveland, Denver at home, Cincinnati at home. So you're done with Cincinnati by week 10. At Pittsburgh, you see the Steelers for the first time in week 11. Chargers on the road on a Monday night. That has an asterisk. So that's subject to change. If the Chargers aren't good, they could flex that game out of there. That's what that means. Eagles at home, bye week in week 4. So they got the latest bye you can possibly have. So we'll see if that's beneficial to them or not. Come off the bye, you're at the Giants. Home for the Steelers on Saturday. And then week 17, you're at Houston on Christmas Day. What day does Christmas fall on this year? Anybody know the answer to that? And then week 18, you're home for the Cleveland Browns. So on the surface, this looks like a pretty tough schedule because I don't see like any portion of the schedule where you go, okay, it's letting up there, right? Because even in that pocket, when I was first going through it, I looked at Washington, at Tampa, at Cleveland, Denver. I was like, that's not too tough. But then you think about it, at Tampa, playoff team from a season ago, at Cleveland, playoff team a season ago, and that's family business, and Cleveland knows how to play you. Denver, don't know what they're going to be. That feels like Washington, that you should win that game. And then there's Cincinnati there, and that's on Thursday Night Football. So that it doesn't feel like it's easing up all that much, right? And it doesn't really, do so. I mean, Cincinnati, Thursday night football at home, at Pittsburgh, at the Chargers, then Philadelphia at home, and then the bye week. Like there's no let up really. At the Giants after the bye, then Pittsburgh. That one is a Saturday game at home. At Houston, not going to be easy. That's a rematch of the playoff game from last year, and Cleveland to finish up. So there's really no let up in the schedule, right? They're just going to have to play good football throughout. They're fully capable, as we know. They're a really good, similar to Dallas, they're a really good regular season team. Their struggles usually come in the postseason, but I digress. 7-piece for Baltimore in terms of color, 5 primetime games. Buffalo also has 5. Let's see how much color they have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So they're true to form color-wise. Home for Arizona week 1. At Miami on a Thursday night week 2. They're technically the first Thursday night game of the season. Jacksonville on Monday Night Football. So you get the rare trifecta from the Buffalo Bills. 3 consecutive primetime games in a row. They don't just give those to anybody. That's a very rare feat that you see pulled off, and they have it. All right. At Miami for a Thursday night football. Jacksonville on a Monday night the following week, and then at Baltimore on Sunday night football. So 3 prime timers in a row. So get comfortable with the Bills early in the season because you're going to see them quite a bit. And then at Houston, and then at the Jets on Monday Night Football. So 4 of their first 6 games are in a primetime slot. Wow. They're giving us Buffalo early and often. And all of those games have a chance to be really good. And, another thing that I'm noticing in this stretch, a lot of road games here. After starting the season off at home against Arizona, at Miami, home for Jacksonville, at Baltimore, at Houston, at the Jets, 3 straight road games, 4 out of 5 road games. So they're going to get some home cooking here at some point in the season where they're going to get 3 out of 4 at home or 4 out of 5 at home. Something to that effect to kind of even the slate. But yikes, 4 out of 5 on the road. To me, there's nothing worse than playing a team on primetime in their building if they're good. Now, it doesn't mean you can't beat them, but it's just tough. It just makes it that much tougher. And every single one of these primetimers, for the most part, with the exception of Jacksonville, was on the road. That's early. So not favorable for the Buffalo Bills. And when you look at the schedule, Miami, playoff team from last year. Baltimore, playoff team from last year. Houston, playoff team from last year. And the Jets look like a Super Bowl contending team if Aaron Rodgers is healthy. So, again, that's some serious heavy lifting early in the season, if I may say so myself. At the Jets week 6 on a Monday night. Tennessee at home week 7. At Seattle in week 8. Home for Miami in week 9. At Indy in week 10. Home for Kansas City in week 11, and then you hit your bye in week 12. You come off the bye. San Francisco on Sunday Night Football, at the crib, at the Rams, at the Lions, then home for the Jets, Patriots, home for the Jets, at New England. So you played in New England twice in the final 3 weeks of the season. You would probably have loved to have used up one of those New Englands earlier when you had all of those big-time matchups. You'd like to break some of that up. But if you need it, it's good to know that you got a couple of New Englands in your back pocket if you need it late in the season to try to make a playoff push. That's a good thing. There is no stretch. I was expecting like a 3 out of 4, 4 out of 5 stretch to kind of combat that early stretch of 4 games out of 5 on the road and 3 in a row, including 3 in a row on the road. There is no such stretch. They didn't clean up. They didn't clean them up. I mean, technically, yes, it's a 3 out of 4 there, but there's a bye in there, so it kind of waters it down. But Miami, at Indy, home for Kansas City, bye week, you can come off the bye, you got San Francisco. So there's your 3 out of 4. It's just broken up kind of weirdly. So that's a tough schedule, man. I ain't gonna front. That's a tough schedule, especially the start to it. Not having a New England early to break up some of this tough football to get you, a couple wins under your belt. That's rough. But again, if I'm Buffalo, it's good to know that those are in my back pocket. If I need them, I can pull them out. All right, Carolina. So we know they have no color. We already established that. And we don't expect them to be any good. At New Orleans, Chargers in week 2 at home, at the Raiders week 3, home for the Cincinnati Bengals, at Chicago week 5, home for, so they're starting off home, away, home, away, home, away, or away, home, away, home, away, home, until they get to week 7 and they got 2 straight away games, which then creates a 3 out of 4 cluster of away games. So pretty balanced start to the schedule. And honestly speaking, not a brutal start either. If you're Carolina at New Orleans, you can win that game. Chargers, we'll see what the Chargers are. At Vegas, you can win that game. Cincinnati, probably not going to win that game. But you who knows, right? Strange things happen, might rain in that game, and that could even the playing field, and you could steal one. Who knows? At Chicago, you could win that game. Probably won't. Home for Atlanta, family business. Why not? At the crib. You usually play Atlanta pretty well at home. At Washington, you can win that game, right? At Denver, you can win that game. So they're not giving you, this is not a tough schedule by any stretch of the imagination. After at Denver, home for New Orleans, home for the Giants. Well, technically home for the Giants, but it's over in London. So it's not a home game. And then you got your bye week. Then shit heats up. Then they turn the tables on your ass, say, hey, look, if you're going to get some wins, you better do it before the bye. Because we're going to tighten your ass up after the bye week. Then shit gets real. Kansas City at the crib, Tampa at the crib, at Philadelphia, home for Dallas, Arizona, at Tampa Bay, at Atlanta. The shit gets real then, right? Playoff team in Kansas City, playoff team in Tampa Bay, playoff team in Philadelphia, playoff team in Dallas a season ago, Arizona, okay, at Tampa Bay, playoff team from last year, and at Atlanta, a team that you expect to be good this season. So they turned the notch up quite a bit on Carolina after the bye week. Chicago, they have a 3-piece, right? Yeah, they got a 3-piece. So week 1, Caleb Williams will welcome the Tennessee Titans to Chicago. At Houston, that should be fun. CJ Stroud against Caleb Williams. That should be a nice little matchup there that they'll hype up. At Indy, and that'll be Richardson. So another matchup that they'll hype up with another young quarterback. Rams at the crib, Panthers at the crib, Jacksonville over in London, and then a bye week. So let's analyze this thing prior to the bye. They can get off to a nice little start here, man. Tennessee, we'll see, right? They should win that game, right? They're gonna win that game. Houston at Houston on a Sunday night. That one feels like an ass whooping coming, right? Yeah. With Danielle Hunter being added, with Will Anderson and those corners. Oy vey. That one feels like that one could be one of those, hey, rookie, welcome to the NFL moments. At Indy, doable, right? Rams at home, Panthers at home, right? Yeah. Jaguars over in London, yeah. Yeah. Why not? Right? Come off the bye. At Washington, why not? At Arizona, why not? Right? This is not tough stuff here. If you're Chicago, this is a good schedule so far. New England, what are we talking about here, right? Green Bay at home, Minnesota. So you got 3 straight home games here. New England, Green Bay, Minnesota, all at home. Then it gets a little tough as we finish up. At Detroit, that's a Thanksgiving game. At San Francisco, ouch. At Minnesota, that's a Monday Night Football game. We'll see what J.J. McCarthy's talking about by then. Home for Detroit. You played them really well last year. I get it's a different season and different team, all that good stuff, but family business. Thursday Night Football against Seattle in week 17, and then at Green Bay in week 18. So they do turn it up a bit there as you head into Thanksgiving. Shit gets a little bit tougher starting with Thanksgiving Day against Detroit. But prior to that, I mean, there's some games mixed in there at Houston on a Sunday night. That seems like that's got ass whooping written all over it, right? Similar to, week 3 for Washington on the road at Cincinnati. That feels like it's got ass whooping written all over it for a young quarterback. Looks like he's going to be caught in a deer in headlights. That kind of gives me those vibes in week 2. But outside of that, it's a lot of winnable games, man. I mean, you may not be favored in all of these games, but there's a chance. So you're telling me there's a chance. I don't see like a really brutal stretch other than there's this pocket right here. There's this 4-week stretch from Thanksgiving to week 16 at Detroit, at San Francisco, at Minnesota. So 3 straight road games, and then you finish up that stretch at home against Detroit. So 3 games against playoff teams from a season ago. 2 of them are against the same team in Detroit. But you're playing the 2 teams that played in the NFC Championship game 3 times in a 4-week stretch, 2 of which are on the road. So, yeah, it's a little tough. That's the pocket of the schedule that I say, okay, that's a little rough. But if you're Chicago, you got to – I'm looking at the start of the season. You got 6 games prior to the bye. You got to start the season off 4-2. You lose at Houston and you lose at home to the Rams. You got to go to Indy and win. You got to beat Tennessee. You got to beat Carolina at home. You got to beat Jacksonville over in London. You start 4-2. Hell, you start 3-3. Say you drop another one. Say you drop the game at Indy. You start 3-3 though. You got to be feeling really good about this, especially coming off the bye at Washington, at Arizona, and then New England. Those 3 teams. Those are the 3 teams that picked the highest in the draft last year after you. And you didn't earn that. Carolina did, right? So you're playing the 3 worst teams from a season ago after that. Like, you just start the season off at 500. You got to feel good about yourself if you're Chicago. Cincinnati. See what they're talking about. They were what, a 4-piece? 5. 5-star. Let's see what kind of color we're talking about. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The 6th one doesn't really count because that's a Saturday, Sunday flex. So it's true to form, really. The color is true to form. It's 5 prime timers. And it looks like this. So they get off to a cupcake start. They're welcoming Jacoby Brissett and the New England Patriots in week 1. So they should get off to a fast start there. But then quickly, the tables turn at Kansas City. That'll be a marquee matchup in week 2. Monday Night Football against Washington at home. Yikes for the Commanders. At Carolina. So, right, let's just stop right there, right? Your first 3 out of 4 games are against bottom-feeding teams. 3 of the worst teams in football last season. As a matter of fact, technically speaking, the 3 worst teams from last season, you're starting out with them in the first 3 out of 4 weeks. So unlike Buffalo and Baltimore, who the NFL slapped in the face immediately, like, hey, wake up. We need you to play some tough games. They're like, hey, Cincinnati, Joe's coming off of an injury. Let's kind of ease you back into things. They're going to give you some cupcakes, some layups. Don't miss them. Don't miss the bunny. Okay? We're throwing you the alley. Don't hit the back of the rim. Right? The only thing we're going to give you in there that's tough is Kansas City in week 2. But you got New England. You got Washington at home. We put Washington up on a platter for you. At home on a Monday night, no less. Let you put on your dope white jerseys with the white helmets. At Carolina, beat their ass. Then Baltimore, right? At the crib. That's going to be tough. But it's Baltimore. You know them. At the Giants, that's a Sunday night game. That shit's going to get flexed. I got no doubts. There'll be something else that's better at that point than the Giants. Before I say that, let me see what the Giants' schedule looks like. I don't know what their schedule looks like. Maybe the Giants can get off to a fast start and it makes that game competitive. But all signs point to the NFL bailing on that game. But we'll see. At Cleveland, home for the Eagles, home for Vegas, at Baltimore. So you're done with the Ravens at week 10. Let's see what your road games look like. Okay, so you're going home, away, home, away, home, away, away. So you're pretty balanced too. So they didn't really hooked you up to start off, right? Home, away, home, away, home, away. Then you get 2 away games in a row at Giants, at Browns. Then you get 2 games to offset that in a row at home. Home for Philly, home for Vegas, at Baltimore, at the Chargers. So there's a really balanced start to the schedule. Come off your bye in week 12. Home for Pittsburgh, at Dallas, at Tennessee. That at Dallas game is a Monday nighter. That's not getting flexed. I can assure you of that. At Tennessee, home for Cleveland. That is a Thursday night game. That's probably not going to get flexed. We generally get the Battle of Ohio on primetime television at some point. So I expect that to stay right where it is. And then that Denver game in week 17 can be flexed to either Saturday or remain at Sunday. And then week 18, you're at the Steelers. That is a solid schedule. It gets a little tougher, but there's really no like extremely tough pocket here. It's pretty balanced, right? Even when you want to rev it up a little bit, like say post bye, you're like, okay, shit's about to get tough, right? Not exactly. You know, Steelers at home, okay, yeah, that's family business. Dallas on the road, yeah, on a Monday night, okay, yeah, that's tough. At Tennessee. Okay, it can be tough. It's Tennessee. Like, I don't want to disrespect Tennessee, but it's Tennessee. You know, home for Cleveland. Yeah, it's family business, but okay, Denver at the crib. Like, come on, man. Like, this is a good schedule for Cincinnati. But they earned it. They sucked. Well, they didn't suck last year. Let me rephrase that. They played in the best division in football, and they finished in last place in the best division in football last season. So that helps. Okay, that helps. Anyway, I digress. Browns. Home for Dallas, week 1. That's going to be Tom Brady's debut as an analyst, right? At Jacksonville, week 2. Home for the Giants, week 3. At Vegas, week 4. At Washington, week 5. Can we just stop right there and say, outside of Dallas, I know there's a lot of road games here, right? Your first 4 out of 6 are on the road. I get that. But this is a really good start if you're Cleveland. Like, yeah, Dallas is tough at the crib, and you may not win that game. We'll see what happens. But at Jacksonville, you can win that game. Home for the Giants, you can win that game. At Vegas, you can win that game. At Washington, you can win that game. At Philadelphia, we'll see about that, right? But those first 5 games, yes, 3 of them are on the road, but you can win 4 out of the 5 games. Like, you can beat Dallas too. You can win all 5 of those games, to be honest with you. But it's a lot of road games. 4 out of your first 6 are on the road. I mean, 3 in a row are on the road. At Vegas, at Washington, at Philadelphia. Yikes. But, I mean, the opponents don't scare you. It's just the travel that sucks, right? So, again, somewhere down the line, you're going to get 3 out of 4 at home. To hell with that. They said, okay, we jerked you with 3 straight road games. So here's 3 straight home games to balance it out. Home for Cincinnati, home for Baltimore, home for Chargers. So you get 2 straight against divisional opponents, and then the Chargers at home as well to head into your bye. You come off the bye at New Orleans, home for Pittsburgh, That is a Thursday night game. At Denver is a Monday night game. So back-to-back prime timers for the Browns. That Denver game is probably going to be flexed. Nobody wants to see Denver and Cleveland late in the season. I'd imagine. Well, you know what? Denver could end up being better than we think. That's a good fit for Bo Nix. Who knows? We'll see. At Pittsburgh in week 14, home for Kansas City, at Cincinnati, home for Miami, at Baltimore. So we got some more color here. At Cincinnati is a Thursday night game. Like I said, that's not getting flexed. Battle of Ohio is going to be on television. At home versus Miami on a Sunday night in week 17. Now that reeks of being flexed out of there, but the Dolphins are supposed to be good. If the Browns are any good, that game will stay put. We will see what happens there. They finish up the season with the Baltimore Ravens on the road. I like the schedule, to be honest with you. If you're a Browns fan, you got to like what this schedule looks like. You know, you hate the 4 out of 6 on the road, but you don't hate the opponents. You don't hate being on the road at Vegas or at Washington, you know, or at Jacksonville. None of those destinations scare you. You love the Giants. Hell, you love the NFC East. You play all of your NFC East games in the first 6 weeks of the season. Dallas week 1, Giants week 3, Washington week 5, Eagles week 6. So you're done with the NFC East in the first 6 weeks. 4 out of your first 6 games are NFC East opponents. You got to take advantage of that. You got to take advantage of that, especially with Dallas being in week 1. They don't know. They got to, they got some things that they've shaken up, especially on the defensive side of the football. You can steal that one from Dallas. You got to beat Washington and the Giants. If you don't get the Eagles on the road, okay, cool. You go 3 out of 4 in the NFC East. That's 3 wins right there. And then you go to Vegas and win. Let's say you drop the game at Jacksonville, which you don't have to, but let's say you do. It's a 4-2 start. You'll take that, right? You're going to need it too, because after that, you're home for Cincinnati, home for Baltimore, home for the Chargers. Even though it's some home cooking, you could lose all 3 of those games. So it's a good schedule, if you ask me, for Cleveland. Dallas. So we know they lead the pack with color. They're second. They're tied for second with the Jets and the Ravens and I think a host of other teams with 7. Let's check the color though. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, we did that already. The Chiefs have 8. Dallas has 7. At Cleveland week 1, New Orleans week 2 at home, Baltimore week 3 at home, at the Giants, at the Steelers. So the Giants in week 4 on the road is a Thursday night game. The following week, they're on primetime again at Pittsburgh on a Sunday night. That'll be a massive game there. Home for Detroit. That's a rematch of that controversial finish against the Lions last year. I want to say it was a Saturday night that game took place. That was a fun one. And then you go into your bye week. So they got a relatively early bye, week 7. Do the Cowboys. So let's look at their first 6 games as they head into that bye. At Cleveland, home for New Orleans, home for Baltimore, at the Giants, at the Steelers, home for Detroit. So playoff team from a season ago, playoff team from a season ago, playoff team from. So 3 out of the first 6 are playoff games or teams from a season ago. It's a pretty balanced schedule. 1 away, 2 at home, 2 away, 1 at home. So it's balanced 3-3. So nothing really crazy there. 3 playoff teams, 3 non-playoff teams from a season ago. So it's a pretty solid schedule. Only 1 NFC East team in there. It's very doable. I'll say that. It's outside of, Detroit, which you'll probably still be favored at home in that game if you start the season off well. And Baltimore at home. And again, both of those, your 2 toughest games, if you ask me, are both at home. So we'll see. We know Dallas plays really well, or at least they did play really well at home. Come off the bye at San Francisco on a Sunday night. That's a big one. We know what happened to them last year on a Sunday night in San Francisco. At Atlanta, home for Philly, home for Houston. That's a Monday night game. So that's a battle of Texas. At Washington in week 12, home for the Giants. That's Thanksgiving. Cincinnati the following week on a Monday night. That's weird because normally Dallas gets back-to-back Thursday night games after Thanksgiving. Excuse me. So this year they cut them a little bit of a break and gave them a Thursday and then a Sunday, a Monday, excuse me, night game. So they go Giants Thanksgiving, Cincinnati at home on Monday Night Football the following week in week 14. I mean, this is a balanced schedule, really. At Carolina, home for Tampa, at Philly, home for Washington. It's a very balanced schedule. There aren't many anomalies here. They've got 3 road games on prime time, 3 road games on prime time. There's no crazy stretch, 3 in a row, 4 out of 5 or nothing crazy like that. They got a 3 out of 4 stretch here that I'm looking at. Matter of fact, a 4 out of 5 stretch at home, right? Home for Philly, home for Houston, at Washington, breaks up the 5 games, stretch there. But home for Philly, home for Houston, at Washington, and home for Giants, home for Cincinnati. So there is a stretch there where they have a bunch of home games. But again, it's still a relatively balanced schedule. And they're allowed to have that. The NFC teams have the extra home game this season. So they got 9 instead of 8. So you're going to have that extra game where you can have that extra home game. So it's a pretty balanced schedule. I don't really see like this murderer's row portion of their schedule. I'll say this. There's a stretch right here from weeks 5 to week 11 at Pittsburgh on a Sunday night, Detroit at home in week 6. You come off the bye in week 7 and go to week 8 at San Francisco. At Atlanta, we expect them to be better. Philadelphia at home in week 10 and then home for Houston. That's the tough stretch of the season. Again, though, it's broken up. There's a bye in there and they got some home. Like it's not a bunch of, road games in a row and all that stuff. But that's, I think, the tough stretch of the season. It's a balanced schedule. It's a doable schedule for Dallas. I've seen a lot of 14-3s. People have lost their damn minds. I'll say that. They're not winning 14 games. That's for sure. Denver. How many prime timers did they get? 1? 2. See what color says. True to form, 2. They've got a week 17 matchup against Cincinnati that can be Saturday or Sunday. So color is true to form. At Seattle, home for Pittsburgh, at Tampa, at the Jets. So 3 out of 4 right out of the gates on the road. That's the first thing you notice. And it's a tough 3 out of 4 because at Seattle is just tough in nature. Don't know what Seattle's going to be. So, you could go to Seattle and steal that game. But you're home for Pittsburgh. That's going to be tough, especially with a young quarterback. At Tampa, playoff team from last year, Todd Bowles, eyes light up when he sees a young quarterback, might blitz the draws off of him. We'll see. And at the Jets, we know how good that defense is. And if you're trotting out a young quarterback, it could be problematic. So it's not an easy start to the season. And it's a lot of road games. Then you have Vegas at home, Chargers at home, at the Saints. So it does ease up a little bit, right? Not that the Vegas Raiders are easy or the Chargers are easy or the Saints are easy, but those are winnable games. They feel more winnable than at the Jets, right? Or at Tampa, even though I don't know if Tampa's going to be good again, if Baker Mayfield can follow up what he did a season ago. But Vegas at home, and you're getting home cooking too. That helps. Vegas at home, Chargers at home, at the Saints. That is a Thursday night game. Home for Carolina, at Baltimore, at Kansas City, home for Atlanta, at Vegas, Monday night game versus Cleveland that could be flexed. That feels like that's inevitably going to be flexed. And then you head into a week 14 bye. So you've got one of the latest bye weeks that a team can have. not one of, you got the latest bye a team can have in the season. So that's a pretty late bye week. So let's just talk about that stretch right there, because that's another tough pocket for Denver, if you ask me. After Carolina, you got at Baltimore, loss. At Kansas City, loss. Home for Atlanta, could be a loss. At Vegas, we'll see. Home for Cleveland on a Monday night, potentially. That feels like a loss as well. So, yeah, that's the portion of the schedule I go. That coupled with the first four, with three of them being on the road, it doesn't look good for Denver. Just going to be honest with you. Come off the bye, home for Indy, at the Chargers, at Cincinnati, home for Kansas City to finish up. That's not a great finish to the season either. So, yeah, that's a tough schedule for a young team with a young quarterback. That's a pretty tough schedule, if I may say so myself. Detroit. This is a team that was in the NFC Championship game a season ago. So they have 5 prime timers. Let's see what the color says. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now let's see if one of these is no, I don't see any purple. One of these is Thanksgiving. That's right. Thanksgiving. So they got 5 prime timers, but I always count Thanksgiving as a prime time game too, even though they're the first prime Thanksgiving game, so they're technically during the day. So they really got 6 prime timers. Home for the Rams on a Sunday night, so they kick off the season Sunday Night Football, a rematch of the wild card weekend 1-point victory over the Rams. So okay, that's interesting. It's part of the reason why the Rams have 5-piece, right? I told you I feel like the Rams are going to be a tag along. That's what the first game feels like. Home for Tampa, at Arizona, home for Seattle, and then they get a week 5 bye. So very early bye week. And honestly, the first 4 games feel like very winnable games. You get a rematch of a playoff game in week 1. You get a rematch of a playoff game in week 2 at Arizona. And then you get a Seattle team at home on a Monday night. I don't see why you can't start the season off 4-1, no worse than 3-1. Or 4-0, no worse than 3-1. It's not a bad start to the schedule. Come off the bye at Dallas, at Minnesota. And keep in mind, the first 3 out of 4 are at home, 2 of which are on primetime television at the crib. You got to take care of business out of the gate if you're Detroit. They're giving you an opportunity to do so. At Dallas off the bye, at Minnesota, home for Tennessee, at Green Bay, at Houston, home for Jacksonville, at Indy, home for Chicago. That is a Thanksgiving game. Then you are home for Green Bay on a Thursday night. So they got the Dallas treatment. Normally, Dallas gets 2 Thursday games in a row, Thanksgiving and then the next Thursday. Oh, they gave that treatment to Detroit this year. So they said, move out of the way, Dallas. Detroit's better than you. Give up the Thursday spot. Got it. Home for Buffalo, at Chicago, at San Francisco, home for Minnesota. So that's an interesting finish to the season. You got 3 straight home games, weeks 13 through 15. Home for Chicago on Thanksgiving, home for Green Bay. So 2 divisional opponents back to back at home on primetime television on Thursdays. Then Buffalo at home, at Chicago. So 3 out of your 4 games there are division games. At San Francisco, that's a Monday night game that will not be flexed. That will be there in week 17. And then home for Minnesota. So 4 out of your final 6 are division games. So your schedule is backloaded with division games. So you're going to have to take care of business back into your schedule within the division. There are some pockets here where things get a little rocky. But for the most part, like that final stretch to finish out the season, Chicago, Green Bay, Buffalo, Chicago, San Francisco, that's the toughest stretch of your schedule. but it's doable because 3 of those games in a row are at home. But it's a tough stretch. This is a good schedule if you're Detroit. It's a good schedule. Green Bay, sticking in that division with the other team that made the playoffs. Philadelphia, week 1 on Sunday night. As we know, that's a Friday game in Brazil. So that'll be the first ever Friday night game in week 1. So that's interesting there. So the color for Green Bay was 5. Let's see if that holds true. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yikes. So I've never seen this before. Green Bay has 4 straight primetime games in a row. Buffalo had 3, and that felt a bit excessive. And 4 out of 5. They got 4 in a row. Wow. I don't know if I've ever seen that before. Remember when they tried to push Denver off on us a year ago when Russ first got there? They tried to push him off on us, and we got like 3 out of 4 weeks. And it may have even been like 4 out of 5 or 4 out of 6. This is 4 in a row, though. Wow. That's amazing. All right, so Friday against Philadelphia over in Brazil, Indy at home, at Tennessee, home for Minnesota, at the Rams, home for Arizona, home for Houston, at Jacksonville, home for Detroit. So let's kind of analyze that. Seems balanced initially. Home, international game, home, away, home, away, home, away, home, right? So 3 out of 4 to finish up prior to the bye at home, but it's really balanced. Again, NFC teams get the extra home game. So somewhere in there, you're going to have a 3 out of 4 or something like that, a 4 out of 5, because the NFC has the extra home game this year. If you don't forfeit one of those games to an international, which Green Bay technically does here with Philadelphia. But looking at those first 9 games, there's good balance there. Because you're playing the AFC South, nothing feels, out of whack. You start with Philly, but then you get Indy and Tennessee and Minnesota. I think 3 teams you feel like you should be able to handle. Granted, Minnesota is family business. At the Rams feels, tough on the road, but then Arizona, right? So you can bounce back there if you were to falter on the road. Houston at home should be tough. At Jacksonville could be tough. Home for Detroit will be tough, right? But all doable games, right? Come off the bye at Chicago, home for San Francisco. And this is the stretch of 4 games in a row on primetime television. It starts on Thanksgiving with Miami. So that's Thanksgiving night. So that is absolutely a primetime game. Home for Miami on Thanksgiving night. At Detroit on Thursday night the following week. So again, them and Detroit get the back-to-back Thursdays, right? Then the following Sunday night, you get Seattle. We didn't need that. They didn't have to do that. All right. This is why Seattle had 4, and I told you they should have had 3. We didn't need that game. That's the one that we didn't need from Seattle. We didn't need Green Bay, Seattle on Sunday Night Football. Why? Tell me why. We didn't need that. And then Monday night to finish up that 4-pack, New Orleans on a Monday night at the crib. So that's a balanced primetime schedule, right? 2 road games sandwiched, between 2 home games. After that 4 straight primetime performance at Minnesota and home for Chicago to finish up. So 2 straight games within the division. I like the schedule. I mean, it's because you play the AFC South, there's not a lot here, right? This is a very and you play the NFC West where you go, Seattle, Arizona, Rams, don't know. This is a very doable schedule if you're Green Bay. Very, very, very doable. Houston, they're the darlings. They're the new Detroit Lions now, right? They're the new team that everybody's going to pick to do damage. See what it looks like. At Indy. Home for Chicago on a Sunday night. We talked about that one already. At Minnesota. So that's a good start. I mean, I know at Indy isn't ideal because it's a family matter, and those are always close. But I like you at Minnesota. I like Jacksonville coming to your place. You beat up Jacksonville pretty good last year, especially in Jacksonville. Home for Buffalo. So 3 out of your first 5 are at home. You had a 3 out of 4 stretch there where you got home games. At New England, at Green Bay, home for Indy, at the Jets. So they give the 3 out of 4 right back on the road. Then you got, and that at Jets is a Thursday night game. And then you follow that up with a Sunday night game against Detroit that could be flexed, but it won't be. And then at Dallas on a Monday night. So you got 3 straight. First of all, Houston had a 4-piece. Let's look at the color here because I'm seeing a lot of color here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Shit. I get it. CJ Stroud is exciting, fun brand of football, but damn. This is a legit 6, folks. That's a Christmas game and a week 16 Saturday game. That's some legit shit. Them 6 games are legit primetime games. To hell with the NFL says, which is 4. That's a legit 6. It ain't no international. You know, it ain't no, okay, I see a color there, but it's like week 17 flex Saturday, Sunday. Nah, this is legit. Hey, we got you on Christmas. We got you on a Saturday late in the season, week 16. Nah, this is some real shit. They're giving Houston some royal treatment here. That's what a young quarterback could do for you, though, when he's proven that he's good. We'll see if he's good for real. The second year tells the story. That's some respect, though. 3 in a row on primetime. At the Jets on a Thursday, Detroit on a Sunday night at home, at Dallas on a Monday night. Tennessee home, at Jacksonville, and then the bye week. Come off the bye, home for Miami. At Kansas City, that is on a Saturday. Baltimore on Christmas at home, rematch of the divisional round playoff game, and then at Tennessee to finish up. I like the schedule. I don't think it's I don't see any obvious pockets that are excessively tough other than your bye, which is absolutely the worst bye in the league, week 14. Depending on who you ask. I know players hate it. You come off that bye, Miami at home, playoff team from last year. Kansas City on the road, playoff team from last year. Baltimore at home, playoff team from last year. That's the one pocket where you go, okay, that's brutal. 2 out of the 3 are at home, though. Deal with it. You want to be a good team? You won your division? This is what you asked for? Deal with it. That's a doable schedule. Outside of that little stretch, weeks 15 through 17, and the first game against Miami, you're coming off your bye week. You got 2 weeks to prepare for it. Figure it out. Indy. They got one, right? Yep, one game. I should only see one flash of color. There's another, but it's a week 17 Saturday, Sunday. So it's their one game is true to form. Houston at home, week 1. At Green Bay, home for Chicago, home for Pittsburgh. So 3 out of 4 to start at home. And two teams who made the playoffs last year, their first 2 games, and then 2 teams who did not make it last year. Those are your next 2. At Jacksonville, at Tennessee, home for Miami, at Houston. So stop right there. I see a lot of games in the division very early. You're done with Houston by week 8. You've already played Jacksonville and Tennessee. So you got 4 of your 6 division games within the first 8 weeks. So on average, you're playing a division game every other week to start the season off for the first 8 weeks. See where the next division game is. At Minnesota, home for Buffalo. You got a pretty late bye too. It's the latest bye you can have, week 14. The Jets game in week 11 is your lone primetime game on Sunday night. Raise your hand. Does anybody need that? Jets and Colts. Does anybody need that? That could get flexed. It's in line to be flexed. I can see that being flexed. But like I said earlier, if you want to attach a team to sort of hitching them to a wagon that you know is going to do numbers, you do that. That's what they did here with the Jets. Like the Jets, I didn't need the Jets here. I didn't need the Jets playing the Colts on primetime television. We didn't need that. Detroit at home, at New England. You have your bye week in week 14. Come off the bye at Denver, home for Tennessee, at the Giants, home for Jacksonville. That stretch, week 13 until the finish of the season, if you're making a playoff push, if you're Indy and you're in the thick of things, weeks 13 through the rest of the season, you're going to have a shot. At New England, at Denver, home for Tennessee, at the Giants. A lot of road games, but they're against inferior opponents. You'll have a shot. If you want it, it'll be there for you. You just got to do the work early. And again, it's not a tough schedule because you weren't very good last season, right? I mean, I say that tongue in cheek. You were playing for the division in week 18. So you win that game, you win the division. But you didn't win that game, and you didn't win the division. You didn't go to the playoffs. And this is not a tough schedule. You just got to win games, and we'll see if you're able to do that or not. Jacksonville, sticking in the AFC South. They had what? 2 games? Yeah, 2 prime timers. Let's see what the color says. You know, they got the international, so that's going to skew theirs a little bit. 1, 2, 3, 4. They got the 2 internationals. So it's true to form. The color is what it is. At Miami, week 1. Home for Cleveland, week 2. At Buffalo, week 3. That is a Monday night game. At Houston, week 4. Let's stop right there. 3 out of 4 on the road. All 3 of your road games against playoff teams from a season ago. Ouch. And Cleveland's no slouch at home. Yikes. We're going to find out a lot about Trevor Lawrence and this Jacksonville Jaguars team early. You don't want to dig yourself a hole. Now, what we've seen in this division the last 2 years is anybody can win a division. You can get off to a slow start, whatever, and you can still win the division. But you don't want to make a habit of that. Jacksonville did it a year ago, right? We started off super slow, won like 7 out of their final 8 and won the division. But you don't want to make a habit of doing that shit. They got Indy at home. Then you go into the international series. 2 games in a row over in London, Chicago and New England, both winnable football games. Really, that's the stretch right there, right? it's tough, man. Yikes. Those first 4 games, ouch, 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 and ouch. But then Indy at home, you go over to London, which you have a clear and distinct advantage. That those are real home games for you. Chicago and New England, those are both winnable football games, including the Indy game prior to going overseas. You got a chance to get right if you're Jacksonville in that 3-game stretch. Then you come back from overseas, Green Bay at home, at Philly. That is a Sunday night game that could be flexed. I think that's going to stay right where it is. Minnesota at home, at Detroit. So technically speaking, because those Jacksonville games over in London are home games, technically speaking, you got 4 in a row at home. If we're being technical here, but it's London, so they don't truly count. But we all know Jacksonville plays over there every year, and now they play over there twice a year. They got an advantage over there. They're really a home team over there, and they got 5 out of 6 at home if you count those 2 international games. That's pretty wild. At Detroit, then you got a bye week in week 12. Come off the bye, home for Houston, at Tennessee, home for the Jets, at Vegas, home for Tennessee, at Indy. So your schedule is backloaded with divisional games. You play 4 of your divisional games in the final 6 weeks of the season. So post-bye, that's when you have to do damage in the division. Again, not an ideal start with the 3 out of 4 on the road and all 4 of them being tough games. But after that, I think it's a doable schedule. All of the pockets after that are ones where you say to yourself, hey, we can win 2 out of 3. We can win 2 out of 3. We can win 2 out of 3 and put yourself in a position to be in the mix in the AFC South. Kansas City. We know they lead the pack. 8 games of color, and they're pretty much all legit. There ain't no international games or none of that shit. These boys are getting busy on national television. So, and rightfully so. They've won 2 Super Bowls in a row. Do whatever the hell you want when you're doing it at that clip. Home for Baltimore to kick off the season on a Thursday night. Cincinnati week 2 at home. At Atlanta on a Sunday night. At the Chargers week 4. Home for New Orleans on a Monday night. Then they have a week 6 bye. So the NFL took care of them in terms of the bye week. And while their schedule is pretty rough to start, those first 4 games, while balanced, 2 home, 2 away. Baltimore, we already know that's going to be a war week 1. Cincinnati, always a war, always one of the better watches during the regular season and in the playoffs. At Atlanta, we'll see how good the Falcons are. At the Chargers always play the Chiefs tough. And then home for New Orleans on a Monday night. That's the one where you go, okay, you should take care of business there. Then you have your bye. You come off the bye at San Francisco, at Las Vegas, home for Tampa on a Monday night, home for Denver, at Buffalo, at Carolina, home for Vegas on Black Friday. Then you follow that up with a Sunday night game at the home versus the Chargers. That should be fun. It can be flexed. It won't be. At Cleveland, home for Houston. That is a Saturday game. Then Christmas Day, you're playing at Pittsburgh. That'll be a fun game. And then Denver on the road to finish up. Yeah, it's a tough schedule. It's supposed to be tough, but there's still enough winnable games in here, and they know how to win the tough ones too. They'll navigate this schedule, but playing the NFC South really helps you out. It's nice to get a Carolina and a New Orleans in there. Even Tampa, they should take care of Tampa, right? Nobody cares about going to Carolina, right? You want New Orleans coming to your building. You don't want to go there. You don't want to go to Tampa. You don't mind going to Tampa. You probably rather go to Tampa than Atlanta, but that NFC South really breaks up their schedule and keeps it from being super tough. They play in a tough division. You're playing a first place schedule, so you're getting the best of the best in the AFC. So you're going to play Buffalo. You're going to play Cincinnati, right? You're going to play Baltimore. You're playing that division. So that's tough. But they're the Chiefs. They'll figure it out. Let's see if there's a super tough pocket. Going through it, I didn't feel like there was a super tough pocket. This kind of feels balanced. The start is tough. I made mention of that. The first 4 are tough. After that, yeah, you get at San Francisco and at Vegas and Tampa. I guess that could be considered a tough pocket there. But, in Denver too, at home, they play you pretty well. Family business. And then at Buffalo. So, yeah, I guess that after the bye, that's a little tough stretch too. But, yeah, we'll see. It's as I'm looking at it now again, it's pretty tough throughout, man, because their division is good. And you're playing the AFC North, and that's brutal. And Vegas knows how to play you. They beat you on Christmas last year, which is why they're running that Black Friday game back, because y'all played on Christmas and Vegas got you. The Chargers are, always good against you. The Browns, Texas. I mean, and yeah, it's a tough schedule, man. It's a tough schedule. But again, if I trust anybody to navigate it, it's the Chiefs. Chargers. How many prime timers do they have? 3. I thought they could have had 4, but let's see what theirs look like. Vegas at home week 1, at Carolina, at Pittsburgh, home for Kansas City, and then a bye. So you got the earliest bye that a team can have, which is week 5. 2 on the road, 2 at home. Both of your home games are within the division. It's a solid start. No complaints. Come off the bye at Denver, at Arizona. That is a part of a doubleheader on Monday night. So I would assume that will be the latter portion of that doubleheader. Home for New Orleans, at Cleveland. So you got a 3 out of 4 stretch there. But then intertwined in that is a 3 out of 4 stretch at home. So it's canceled out. Home for Tennessee, home for Cincinnati, home for Baltimore. And then you got 4 out of 5 at home, including a Monday Night Football home date with the Baltimore Ravens. So that's an interesting stretch there. At Atlanta, at Kansas City. Ouch. Home for Tampa Bay, home for Denver, at New England, at Vegas. So there's the pocket of the schedule where you go, okay, we're going to find out how good you really are. I don't know what you've done to this point, but if your season is teetering, we either going to make you or break you right in this stretch. And that stretch it starts in week 11, home for Cincinnati, at home for Cincinnati, home for Baltimore, at Atlanta, at Kansas City, home for Tampa Bay. That 5-game stretch, 3 of which are at home, which is a good thing. One of which of those home games is on Monday Night Football. The road game at Kansas City will be interesting on a Sunday night, but those 5 games are against teams that were either in the playoffs last year or you think they're going to be a playoff team potentially this year. So that's a tough stretch there for the Chargers. Rams. I thought they unjustly got 5 games on primetime television. I told you I felt like they were going to be a tag-along team, meaning they were the attached team to somebody else that was really good, and they just happened to be the opponent. Let's see if I'm right about that or not. Week 1, clearly they're attached to Detroit, but that game has meaning. That was the playoff game in Wild Card Weekend last year, so they're running that rematch back. I get it. At Arizona, week 2, home for San Francisco, week 3, at Chicago, week 4, home for Green Bay, week 5, and then you have a week 6 bye. But before we look at those 5 games, let's look at the color and make sure that it lines up. They're supposed to have 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. And then they got a green in week 17, which means it could be Saturday or Sunday. So it lines up. The first 5, 3 out of 4 to start on the road. But I mean, overall, at Detroit, at Arizona, you can split those, right? You could win at Detroit, but the prevailing thought is you'll probably lose that game. And then you can go to Arizona and win. San Francisco, you never beat them in the regular season, it feels like. So that's going to be tough. At Chicago, winnable football game. And home for Green Bay, winnable football game. So not a terrible start. Come off the bye, you got Vegas at the crib. Then Minnesota on a Thursday night. At Seattle. Then Miami on a Monday night. At New England. Stop right there. That is a soft part of the schedule that you have to take advantage of if you're the Rams. Home for Vegas, you need to win that game. Home for Minnesota, that's on a Thursday night. You need to win that game. At Seattle, that's going to be tough. Family business. Home for Miami, that's on a Monday night. That's going to be tough, but you need to find a way to win that game. Seems like you play them on primetime television quite a bit. I think you've played them each of the last 3 years on primetime television. I could be wrong about that. I know you did it a year ago for sure. I don't know if last season you did, but the year prior to that, I know you did for sure on a Sunday night. Feels like you've done it 2 years in a row. And then no, you know what? I got my teams mixed up. That's the Rams. I'm thinking of the Chargers. Chargers played the Dolphins on primetime the last 2 years. I got my teams mixed up. And then at New England, like, you got to beat Vegas, you got to beat Minnesota, and you got to beat New England. Like, that's the stretch you got. And honestly, Seattle and Miami, you got to find a way to split that. You need to win 4 out of 5 of those games. That's the stretch you got to take care of if you're the Rams. Home for Philly on a Sunday night. At New Orleans. Home for Buffalo. At San Francisco. At the Jets. Home for Arizona. Home for Seattle. So you get a little pocket there of 3 straight where you go, whoa. Home for Buffalo. At San Francisco. At the Jets. If Rodgers is healthy, that's a tough little stretch there. But we'll see. Really, if you extend that out 2 games, after that 5-game stretch that I talked about where you need to win 4 out of 5, then they give you a stretch where you could easily lose 4 out of 5. Home for Philly, at New Orleans, home for Buffalo, at San Francisco, at the Jets. You could easily turn around and give 4 out of 5 back. We'll see. Interesting schedule, I'll say that. Vegas, they have 2, right? Yep, 2. So the color should be what it is. 1, 2. Yeah, 2. So at the Chargers week 1, at Baltimore week 2, home for Carolina, home for Cleveland, at Denver, home for Pittsburgh. A stop there. 2 roadies to start, 2 home games after that. Pretty balanced. And I could see you splitting those games up and going 2-2 potentially. At Denver, home for Pittsburgh. So it's a balance because it's 2 away, 2 at home, then away, home, away, bye, right? So pretty balanced start to the season, and the games are pretty balanced. I mean, there is a stretch there towards the end. Those 3 games prior to the bye, at the Rams, home for Kansas City, at Cincinnati. That's pretty tough. And you could even extend that and say home for Pittsburgh as well. That's tough. 4 games. Come off the bye in week 10 at Miami. So it extends through the bye. So you could go Pittsburgh, at Rams, home for Kansas City, at Cincinnati, bye, at Miami. That's a tough stretch. Denver, at Kansas City on Black Friday, at Tampa Bay, home for Atlanta on a Monday night. That could be flexed. That feels like it will be flexed. We'll see how good those two teams are. Home for Jacksonville, at New Orleans, and home for the Chargers. They got no chance with Gardner Minshew at quarterback. Zero chance. Miami. See what they got going on. They got a 5-piece cooking. See if that lives up to the hype. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 5-piece. 5-piece. All right. Home for Jacksonville, home for Buffalo, at Seattle, home for Tennessee. So that's week 2 Buffalo game, as we know, is the first Thursday night game of the season. Week 4, you're home for Tennessee on a Monday night, at New England, and then you're bye. So honestly speaking, Battle of Florida, week 1 at home. Buffalo at home, week 2, Thursday night. Seattle, week 3 on the road. Home for Tennessee, Monday Night Football, week 4. At New England, week 5. You could start 5-0. Buffalo at home won't be easy. They swept you last year. So let's say you lose that game. You will be favored in the other 4 games. You will be favored in the other 4 games. Win. You go to your bye week in week 6, come off the bye. Hell, you might even be favored against Buffalo. Who knows? At Indy, home for Arizona, at Buffalo, at the Rams. That is a Monday night game. Home for Vegas, home for New England. Stop right there. That's another pocket where you go, okay, you could win 4 out of your first 5. You could go 5-0, but let's just say you win 4 out of your first 5. Then you come off the bye and they toss you another stretch where I say you need to win 4 out of your next 6, right? You should beat Indy at Indy. You should beat Arizona at home. Yeah, probably go to Buffalo and lose. You could lose at Los Angeles, the Rams, on a Monday night. But then you need to beat Vegas at home and you need to beat New England at home. That's another stretch where I say win 4 out of 6. You do that, you're 8-3. Like, they're giving you a chance to be competitive in that division. Take advantage of it, right? Now, you need to beat Buffalo. That's the team you're competing against. And I got them sweeping you right now, potentially, till you prove otherwise. But take advantage of this schedule. This is a really, really advantageous schedule. At Green Bay, that's a Thanksgiving game, Thanksgiving night. Home for the Jets, at Houston. Okay, now they're getting some get back here. That's a tough 4-game stretch, 5-game, 6-game stretch there to finish up. And hell, you could be competing with the Jets for the division as well. That's so you finish up pretty tough. They gave you an opportunity to build up because we know you don't finish seasons well, right? You're a front runner team. You start out hot and then you fizzle down the stretch. They're giving you an opportunity to change the narrative because they give you a chance to build up your numbers, right? Stack a bunch of bricks in the left-hand column, and then you can't fumble it away at the end. But they're saying, hey, we gonna put it on your ass. Pause. What you gonna do? You gonna fold or you gonna fight? Because those last 5 games, at Green Bay, home for the Jets, at Houston, home for San Francisco, at Cleveland, at the Jets, those last 6 games, at Green Bay and at Cleveland, both on primetime television, 2 against the Jets, at Houston and home for that's brutal. You could lose all 6 of those games. You probably won't, but you could. We'll see. They're setting you up for success. You just better build up as many wins as you can because when you get to the end of the season, they're going to be hard to come by once you get to that Green Bay game on Thanksgiving. They're going to be hard to come by after that. Minnesota. How many prime timers? They got a 2-piece. See if that checks out. 1, 2, 3, but they got an international. So yeah, it checks out. At the Giants, week 1, home for San Francisco, week 2, home for Houston, week 3, at Green Bay, week 4, home for the Jets, week 5. That's international, though. and then the bye. It ain't nothing worse than wasting home. I shouldn't say that. You want to play tough teams at home. But if you know it don't matter home or away, we're probably going to lose the game anyway, I'd rather just play those on the road. Like, let me get some home games I can handle. But it goes both ways because I think if I'm playing a team that's tough, I'd much rather get them at home. It gives me a shot. They got a lot of teams that they shouldn't beat, but they're at home, so it gives them a shot. But after the Giants week 1, which they can win that game on the road, home for San Francisco, home for Houston, at Green Bay, home for the Jets, international game. So technically nobody's home. That's rough. That's rough. Those next 4, oy vey. You could go 0-4 in that stretch right there. I mean, and you got a young squad. You got more than likely not, JJ McCarthy's going to be a day 1 starter. I'm looking at 1-4 heading into that bye. Yikes. Come off the bye. Detroit at the crib. Ouch. At the Rams. Ouch. Indy. Okay. Home for Indy. At Jacksonville. Okay. At Tennessee. Okay. At Chicago. Okay. Again, they're all road games. Not ideal, but why not? Right? Why not? Home for Arizona, home for Atlanta, home for Chicago. That's your other prime timer. That is a Monday night game that could be flexed. Keep an eye on that one. That probably will be flexed. I think both of those teams will. Chicago could be formidable, but Minnesota's going to stink by then. That game's going to be flexed out of there. At Seattle, home for Green Bay, at Detroit. Yeah. I'm staring at like 1 and like 6 or 7 after the first 9 weeks, like 1 and 7. Yeah, this is gonna be a rough season, I think. And you know what? Kevin O'Connell does a great job, and he's gonna scheme it up. And McCarthy doesn't turn it over. We'll see. They may surprise some people, including me, and win some of these games that I don't expect them to win, but they're going to have to prove it to me because I don't see it. It's a tough – the first 8 weeks, brutal. Brutal. For a young team with a rookie quarterback, brutal. 1-6, that's what I see. New England, oh, man, this is rough. They got 1, right? Yeah, buddy. And they got an international and they got a green. So the 1 is pretty much to true form. At Cincy, home for Seattle, at the Jets, at San Francisco, home for Miami, home for Houston, Jacksonville over in London, London. I don't think Jacksonville has a Germany game. Let's stop right there. At Cincinnati, ouch. Home for Seattle, okay. At the Jets, ouch. At San Francisco, ouch. Home for Miami. Home for Houston. Jacksonville internationally. Okay, you got a shot. Home for the Jets. They ain't even give you a chance out the gate. They told you your first 4 games, you'd be lucky to get one of them things. You'd be lucky to get one of them things. And then even your home games, Miami, Houston, Jacksonville, that's technically a international game. And then the Jets, everybody looking at New England like food. They're going to have to decide if they're going to be the prey or the predator. Right now, they're the prey. Everybody's bringing utensils and napkins, and they're looking to eat. When they see New England on the schedule, they're bringing their kit, their full kit. Yeah, this is going to be rough. At Tennessee, at Chicago, home for the Rams, at Miami, home for Indy, and They got a nerve to give you a week 14 bye. As if it's not bad enough, you probably getting your brains bashed in. They like, yo, just wait till the end of the season before you catch a break. Damn. Come off the bye at Arizona, at Buffalo, home for the Chargers. That's a flex Saturday, Sunday, and then home for Buffalo. So at the Jets on a Thursday night in week 3 is your only true primetime game. What were they? 4-13 last year? Go ahead and ring them up for another one of them things. Might even be 3-14 this year. Let's. What's more important here? Let's find where Drake May gets his start. Right. Let's find, because you would have liked to have seen that bye week be like week 9 and then say, all right, Drake, you take the rest of the season because we 1-7 at that point. Right. They waited till week 14. Like, if Drake May don't start till after the bye, he only starts the last one. That's garbage. 4 starts, that's trash. We got to find a pocket in here at home somewhere where this man can start. Let's see if we can find it. Damn. You want him to start at home, right? The first game has to be at home, and you don't want it to be like some trifling, nasty defense. Because I was thinking, okay, the perfect time would be. That's not even a perfect time, though. Because the right pocket would be at Tennessee, at Chicago. But those are road games. I don't want to start him on the road. I'm not starting him at home against the Jets. I'm not doing that. I'm not going to take him over to Jacksonville where you got this, crazy schedule. It's not a normal week, and asking him to prepare on the road or, across the pond. That's too much for a young quarterback. I don't want to start him at home against Houston. That's a ferocious defense. Look, we got to get the young boys out there as soon as possible. I don't know how long is too long. The first, because they're going to get their asses kicked in the first 4 weeks. And at that point, the fans are going to be like, yo, put Drake May in the game, right? After you get your brains bashed in against Cincinnati, the Jets, and San Francisco all on the road. At that point, you're like, yo, put him in, bro. We just got our ass waxed 37-13 by San Francisco. Put Drake May in, bro. We 1-3. Hell, we 0-4. Seattle came in and waxed us too. I would put him in week 5 is the first time I see an opportunity. But that might be too. He might not be ready yet. How about Indy right before the bye? It's so late, bro. That's week 13. That's not enough football for me. Tell you what, week 11 at home against the Rams is where I would start him. That's if he's not ready in week 5, the next time I consider starting him is week 11. I'm not starting him at home against Houston. I'm not taking him on the across the pond and starting him against Jacksonville, although that would be an ideal situation. I'm not starting him against Jacksonville in London. I don't want him coming back from London and starting against the Jets. That's not an ideal situation either. Although week 8 would be ideal, in terms of the time frame, but I'm not starting him there either. The Rams in week 11 is, if you ain't starting week 5, it's week 11. Good luck being a Patriot. You know what? You're due for this shit. Just take this on the chin. I don't feel bad for Patriots fans. Take this shit on the chin. You had 20 years of greatness. Take this shit in stride. New Orleans. Home for Carolina. Well, first of all, they had 3. I told you they felt like that was excessive. I told you I feel like they're an attachment team. They have no business having 3 games. So they're attached to good teams is my guess. Let's see if the color matches up. 1, 2, 3. So the color is spot on. There's no extra color here. Carolina, week 1 at home. At Dallas, week 2. Home for Philly, week 3. At Atlanta, week 4. Home at Kansas City, week 5. That is a Monday night game. Home for Tampa Bay. Let's stop right there. Three out of your first 6 are division games, 2 of which are at home. The other 3 games that aren't division games are all against teams that made the playoffs last year and are considered Super Bowl contending teams: Dallas, Philadelphia, Kansas City. 2 of those 3 games are on the road. The schedule is pretty balanced. You're just going to have to win a game you're not supposed to win, and you're going to have to take care of business in the division. That's what it amounts to the first 6 weeks. Home for Denver, week 7. That is a Thursday night game. At the Chargers, at Carolina, home for Atlanta. Let's stop there because I see a lot of divisional games already. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You've played all 5 of your division games because obviously you have to save one for week 18. You've played all of your division games by the time you get to week 10. You're done until you get to week 18. So what I'm telling you is in the first 10 weeks, you average a divisional opponent every other week. You, on average, play a divisional opponent every other week, your first 10 weeks. You got 5 division games. You better take care of the division if you want to have a chance to win it. After Atlanta in week 10 at home, Cleveland at home, and then you have a week 12 bye. So a little bit of a later bye. Home for the Rams, at the Giants, home for Washington, at Green Bay. Let's just talk about that stretch right there because it's a doable stretch. Home for the Rams, at the Giants, home for Washington. You can win those 3 games. You probably need to win 2 out of 3 of those games. Let's say you don't get the Rams at home. You better beat the Giants and Washington if you have any intentions of winning the division. At Green Bay is a Monday night game that has a chance to be flexed. I see it being flexed. So let's just talk about the 3 games. So 2 of them, they're attached to a good team, Green Bay and Kansas City. Why are we getting Denver, New Orleans on primetime television? Okay, I get it. It just dawned on me. Sean Payton's return to New Orleans. That's the storyline. That's why that game can't be flexed. Matter of fact, no Thursday games. Late in the season, they got some Thursday games that can be flexed, but that game's not going anywhere because Sean Payton's returning to New Orleans for the first time since he left. Got it. Okay. That's why they got 3 and not 2. Makes sense now. I didn't realize he was going back. Vegas at home and at Tampa. So this is not a bad schedule. It's a doable schedule. I just don't think the New Orleans Saints are very good. I think they're an average team, and I think they're going to be average, and I think they're going to be a 7, maybe 8-win team. And this schedule suggests that you can win 9, 10 games if you are a good team. I just don't think they're a good team. So, Giants, home for Minnesota, at Washington, at Cleveland, home for Dallas. First of all, Giants have 3. Let's see what the color says. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, let's decipher this. You got a green in week 17. We know what that means, so that doesn't count. You got a purple, which means that's an international game, so that doesn't count. And you got a Thanksgiving game against that. So you really got 4. They got you for 3. You really got 4 because you got Thanksgiving. Okay. And that's funny because both of your Dallas games are on primetime. Don't do that. Okay. The Giants aren't good enough for that shit. You could have just left them on Thanksgiving and then take away that week. What is that? 4? We don't need that shit. We don't need them at home against Dallas on primetime. Give that shit to somebody else. They already playing Dallas on Thanksgiving. We don't need to see them slaughtered twice. Thanks, but no thanks. You would think that them losing to Dallas a combined like 900-7 last year would have made them say, 1's enough. No mas. They said, nah, we're going back for seconds this year. We're going to put them on twice. That was really smart, guys. Great job. Dallas on a Thursday night. And then at that, you got them playing Dallas on a Thursday night twice or Thursday twice. That wasn't smart, schedule makers. At Seattle, home for Cincinnati on a Sunday night. That has a chance to be flex. Let's see if that's going to be flex. Let's look at the first 5 games. Home for Minnesota. You can win that game. They'll be starting a rookie quarterback. At Washington, you've played shit. You've owned Washington of late, so you're probably thinking you're going to win that game. At Cleveland, that'll be tough, but it's a winnable game. Dallas, home, Thursday night, you're going to lose that game. At Seattle, probably going to lose that game too, but we'll see. You could have easily have beaten them last year before it got out of control. Daniel Jones throws that pick 6, 99-yard pick 6 or whatever it was, changed everything. And then Cincinnati, they'll probably keep that game where it is. I could see the Giants at least being 2-3, right, which won't be terrible. And Cincinnati will probably be pretty good because they got a soft start to their schedule. So they'll leave that game there. Philadelphia at home, at Pittsburgh, home for Washington, Carolina overseas, and then a bye. So this is the determining stretch of their season right here. If they're going to be any good, it starts with, you could argue you could move it all the way back to Dallas, but they're going to lose that game. What's going to define their season is starting with at Seattle. So week 5, all the way to the bye week, right? At Seattle, home for Cincinnati, going to lose that game. Home for Philadelphia, probably going to lose that game. At Pittsburgh, you got to find a way to win one of those 3 games. You can't lose all 3 of them. You got to beat somebody. Beat Pittsburgh, beat Philadelphia, beat Cincinnati. If you don't want to have a season, then lose all 3 of those games, right? You got Washington at home, probably feel like you're going to beat them, and then Carolina. But if you lose to Seattle, if you lose to Cincinnati, if you lose to Philadelphia, if you lose to Pittsburgh, damage is done, even if you beat Washington and Carolina going into your bye. You lose those 4 games because you're going to lose to Cleveland or Dallas in the first 4 games, if not both of those teams, right? And then you lose 4 in a row. That's 6 losses going into your bye at week 11. So you would have played 10 games. You'd be 4-6. Well, 4-6 isn't terrible, but that's going to define your season, I believe. That's going to determine, whether you're good or not. And that's assuming you beat Washington in week 2. You might not win that game in week 2, right? Probably won't beat Cleveland in week 3. You're not going to beat Dallas in week 4. You could easily start the season off 1-3 and then mess around and lose 4 straight and be 1-7. We've seen the Giants do that. This kind of feels like one of those types of seasons for the Giants where everybody gets fired at the season's end. They get a quarterback because they're the 3rd pick in the draft. This feels like one of them type years. Let's see if they can prove everybody wrong. Come off the bye in week 11, Tampa Bay at home, at Dallas on Thanksgiving, home for New Orleans, home for Baltimore, at Atlanta, home for Indy, at Philadelphia. I'll tell you this much. If you're in it post-bye, say you get to the bye at 4-6, which is very doable. You come out of the bye, you could beat Tampa Bay at home, and get to 5-6. You're probably going to lose to Dallas on Thanksgiving. Put you at 5-7. New Orleans, you could probably handle them though. Put you at 6-7. Baltimore, you beat them 2 years ago when you made the playoffs, but probably not gonna beat them at whether it's home or away, and it's home. But that'll put you at 6-8. At Atlanta, just depends on how good the Falcons are. Probably gonna lose that game. Indy, you can beat them at home, and then at Philadelphia. I just don't see how you get more than 6 or 7 wins with this schedule, but this feels like a bottom out type season. If shit doesn't go well early, the first 4 games will determine largely what kind of season it's going to be. We get to week 4 and Daniel Jones is the starter, but they already ready to bench his ass and they calling for Drew Lock. It's going to be a long season. A long season. All right. Jets. We already know they got 7. We already counted them up. 6 prime timers and then an extra game in there overseas. So we already counted them up. They got 7. And I told you they set the record for the most primetime games in a 10-week stretch. The first 11 weeks of the season, the Jets have 6 primetime games. And if you count the international game, they're on 7 times. So in their first 11 games, they will be on your television. Now, you can choose to watch or not watch, but they will be on your television 7 out of their first 11 games because they will be on national television. I've never heard of anything like that ever in my life. Now, that's 2 anomalies on this schedule that I can't remember ever seeing. Okay. Green Bay has 4 consecutive primetime games. I can't recall a team doing that. And the Jets have 7 national televised games in the first 11 weeks, including a stretch where they have 3 in a row, 5 out of 7. Wow. Let's go through it. At San Francisco, Monday Night Football. We know about that one. At Tennessee, week 2. Home for New England. That's a Thursday night game. Week 3. Home for Denver. International game against Minnesota, week 5. Home for Buffalo, Monday Night Football, week 6. At Pittsburgh, week 7 on Sunday night. That's not being flexed at all, even though it can be. It's not going to be. So let's stop right there. 5 of the first 7 games are on national television if you count the international game, which will be on, right? At San Francisco is going to be tough. At Tennessee, you expect them to take care of business there. New England, you expect them to take care of business there. Denver, you expect them to take care of business there. Minnesota. So this shit's easy so far, right? After San Francisco, they should win the next 4 games. Get you to worst case scenario, you're 4-1. You could be 5-0 heading into that massive showdown with Buffalo on a Monday night at home in week 6. Worst case scenario, you're 4-1. Anything less would be uncivilized. So that Buffalo game is going to be huge. Early season test. That might be one of those games that go a long way in determining who's going to win that division, right? Then you have at Pittsburgh after that on a Sunday night, at New England, home for Houston on a Thursday night, at Arizona, home for Indy on a Sunday night. So honestly, prior to the bye, this is a cake schedule. Like, if we just keeping it a buck, they will be favored in every single one of these games except at San Francisco, that about it. At San Francisco in week 1, I think they'll be favored at home. If they take care of business the first 5 weeks, they'll be favored at home against Buffalo. They'll be favored at home against Buffalo. Those are the only 2 games, and Houston potentially, that they could lose out of their first. Where's their bye? Is it week 10 or 11? Week 12. Out of their first 11 games, I only see 3 games that they could possibly lose. San Francisco week 1 on the road on a Monday night. Buffalo at home on a Monday night in week 6. And Houston on a Thursday night in week 9. Outside of those 3 games, they should win and will be favored. And at Pittsburgh is not going to be easy either. But they still should beat the Steelers. They still should beat the Steelers. So they're benefiting from finishing where they finished in that division last year. 3rd? Had to be 3rd. Because New England was one of the worst teams in football. So they're benefiting from a 3rd place schedule. And they play the AFC South. That helps. And they also play the NFC West. That helps too, because Seattle and Arizona feel like games that a team like the Jets should be able to handle. And really, honestly speaking, the Rams feel like a game that they should be able to handle too. But, we'll see. But if that game's in LA, do the Rams really have a real home field advantage? Anyway, come off the bye, home for Seattle, at Miami, at Jacksonville, home for the Rams, at Buffalo, home for Miami. So you don't get Miami until week 14, and you get them twice in the final 5 weeks of the season. You get your last Buffalo matchup in week 17. So it gets pretty hot and heavy in the division late. But again, this is of the 3 teams that we think are going to be competing for that division, Buffalo, Miami, and the Jets. The Jets have the easiest schedule of the 3 teams, which they should, technically speaking, because they finished 3rd. Miami finished 2nd, and Buffalo finished 1st. But the Jets should win this division. I'll just say that. If Rodgers is healthy and he's still good, they should win the division. Philadelphia. Brazil, week 1 against Green Bay. Home for Atlanta, week 2 on Monday Night Football. We talked about that already. At New Orleans, week 3. At Tampa Bay, week 4. A bye week, week 5. So a super early bye. And all NFC teams, 3 out of their first 4, 3 in a row, are all NFC South teams. So essentially, without Carolina, they're taking care of the AFC South. And if they clean up that division, they can get off to a pretty fast start this season. Now, at Tampa is a rematch of the playoff game that they lost. At New Orleans is not going to be a cakewalk, but you expect them to go to New Orleans and win. Home for Atlanta, you expect them to take care of that one. Green Bay will be interesting over in Brazil. So, interesting start. I don't see anything less than 3-1. I could see 4-0, and I could see 2-2. I don't see anything less than 2-2. But that's the absolute worst. Something would have to go awry for them to be 2-2. I see 3-1 here, with the one loss either being Green Bay or one of the at games, right? New Orleans or Tampa. I don't see them losing to Atlanta at home. So come off the bye. You're home for Cleveland, at the Giants, at Cincinnati, home for Jacksonville. That's all doable stuff. That Jacksonville game is a Sunday night contest that will remain there. At Dallas, home for Washington on a Thursday night. At the Rams on a Sunday night, excuse me. So 3 out of 4 weeks they're on primetime television, 2 of which are Sunday night games. And they got a quick turnaround against Washington after the Dallas game. So a couple of divisional games, a war with Dallas. And if you're a Washington fan, that's a good sign. They go to battle with Dallas, expend all of that energy, come off of that game, quick turnaround, and Washington's waiting for them on a Thursday night. You like your chances with that happening, because you could easily be overlooked, or they don't have enough energy for you come Thursday night. That's what you're hoping, right? At the Rams on a Sunday night, excuse me. At Baltimore, home for Carolina, home for Pittsburgh, at Washington, home for Dallas, at the Giants. So their final 3 games are all divisional opponents. So their schedule is somewhat backloaded with division games. But it's a pretty balanced and doable schedule, to be honest with you. I don't really see an incredibly tough stretch. Probably the toughest stretch of games resides at Cincinnati. So week 8 through week 13 is what I would say. You've got at Cincinnati, home for Jacksonville. That's a Sunday night game. At Dallas, quick turnaround, Washington family business at home rather on a Thursday night. At the Rams on a Sunday night, and then at Baltimore. That's as tough as their schedule gets right there. That pocket. That'll be a season defining portion of their schedule, similar to what they had last year. You know, when they got off to a fast start, and then they had that part of the schedule where they actually navigated it successfully early and then kind of faltered late, and then it just kind of bled over to the rest of their season. That's going to be a interesting pocket there from weeks 8 through 13. If they navigate that successfully, you come out of that, Carolina at home, Pittsburgh at home, you should be able to take care of them. At Washington, we'll see what happens there. You should be able to clean up, you know, and get yourself right, even if you struggle a little bit there. So it's a good schedule for Philadelphia. It benefited them not winning the division, to be perfectly honest, because the schedule would have been a little bit tougher had they won the division. Not a ton tougher though, not a ton. Pittsburgh, at Atlanta, at Denver, so 2 straight road games. Home for Cleveland, or home for the Chargers, and then at Indy. So 3 out of 4. Right out of the gate on the road. They're not tough games. At Denver, at Indy, but you could lose those games, right? You could lose at Indy. You could lose at Denver. I see them taking advantage of a young quarterback. I don't see them losing at Denver. You can lose to the Chargers, right, at home. So we'll see. Home for Dallas on a Sunday night. At the Raiders. Home for the Jets. First of all, what are they? A 4-piece? Yeah. Let's count the color here. Did we count the color for Philadelphia? We know they're a 5-piece. Did we count the color? No, we didn't. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so theirs was true to form. Philadelphia's was true to form, 5. And Steelers are a 4-piece. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Theirs is not true to form. They got a legitimate 6 primetime games. They're the Steelers. You expect that. They got a week 16 Saturday and a Christmas. So those are the 2 that they didn't count because they're not night games, but they're not primetime games technically, but they are. So those are legit. So Steelers are right up there, but you expect the Steelers to be up there. So home for Dallas on a Sunday night, at the Raiders, home for the Jets on a Sunday night, and then home for the Giants on a Monday night. So they're getting a lot of home primetime games. 3 out of 4 weeks they're on primetime, and all 3 of those games are on or are at home, which you don't usually see, right? Then they have a bye week in week 9. So it's a balanced schedule. Games that they can win, games that they can lose. They just got to figure out who they want to be. You want to be average? You'll go 4-4 in that stretch, which is what Tomlin has, done essentially, navigated the schedule and be in it at the end, but not do enough. You can go 9-8. That's kind of how this schedule is trending. Let's see what it looks like after the bye week. At Washington, home for Baltimore, at Cleveland, that's a Thursday night game, at Cincinnati. So 3 out of your first 4 after the bye are all on the road. You got 3, 4, 5 out of 6 games are division games. Yikes. So your schedule is completely backloaded with division games. 1, 2, 3, 4 in a row, right? Which is ridiculous. Okay. As a fan of a team that had a stretch like that towards the end of the season, where we had 5 in a row. It's not fun, but 4 in a row, then Baltimore. So in that stretch, 5 out of 6, you got division games. And then, of course, you finish up with a division game. So 6 of your last 8 games are division games. All 6 of your division games are played in the final 8 weeks of the season. Ouch. So, and the 2 non-division games, at Philadelphia, home for Kansas City. That, my friends, is what we call backloading the shit out of my schedule. Remember, this is the toughest division in football, the AFC North. This is what you call backloading the shit out of my schedule. So you play every team in your division twice, and the 2 non-division games are Kansas City and at Philadelphia. Good luck with that, Pittsburgh. You're going to need it. You are going to need it. Seattle. How many primetimers? They got 4, which is ridiculous. Let's count the color here. 1, 2, 3, 4. So true to form. Home for Denver, week 1. At New England, week 2. Home for Miami. At Detroit on a Monday night. Home for the Giants. Home for San Francisco. That's a Thursday night game. Let's stop right there. Home, away, home, away, home, away. So it's a pretty balanced start. Then when you look at the opponents, you can handle Denver. You can handle New England. You'll have a shot against Miami. At Detroit is going to be pretty tough, but you've had success in Detroit, right? You've had success in Detroit. Home for the Giants, another winnable game. At San Francisco, or home for San Francisco, that's going to be tough. So I like the start. You can get off to a good start if you're Seattle. You got a chance to get off to a good start. At Atlanta, home for Buffalo, home for the Rams, and then your bye week is week 10. So the first 5 games are going to give you an opportunity to build up some wins, to stack some bricks in the left-hand column. You're going to need them because after those first 5 games, the next 4, brutal. Home for San Francisco, at Atlanta, home for Buffalo, home for the Rams. Now, it's 3 out of 4 at home, but all of these teams are either playoff teams from last year, San Francisco, Buffalo, Rams. At Atlanta, the 1 road game is a team that we expect to be better this year. So we're gonna find out what you're made of in that stretch right there. Come off the bye week at San Francisco, home for the Cardinals. So in that stretch, with the bye sandwiched in between, you play 3 straight division games and 4 division games in a 6-week span, right? With the bye being one of those weeks. So really, in 5 games, you're playing 4 divisional opponents. So there's a really concentrated part of your schedule there where you're playing a lot of division games. Rams, bye, 49ers, Cardinals, Jets, Cardinals. So you play the Cardinals twice in 3 weeks. And you got a 3 out of 4 stretch there on the road at San Francisco, home for Arizona, at the Jets, at Arizona. So that's no cakewalk there either. Home for Green Bay on a Sunday night. I think that can get flexed. We'll see. Home for Minnesota, at Chicago. So you play the NFC North late in the season, 3 weeks in a row. And then at the Rams to finish up. So this schedule to me consists of pockets. First 5 games, got a chance to get off to a fast start. The next 4 games, going to be really tough. You hit your bye, you come off your bye, you got a bunch of division games, 3 out of 4 in the division, including 2 in 3 weeks against Arizona, and 3 of 4 on the road in that same stretch. So it's going to be tough. Then after that, you got 3 straight games against the NFC North, and then you finish up at the Rams. It's not an easy schedule, but it's not a hard schedule. You can do this schedule, but it's going to require you to be consistent, something that the Seahawks consistently lack, if that makes any sense. San Francisco. We know that they were a 6-piece, which means they probably are going to be a 7 when it's all said and done. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Nope, true to form, 6. So, week 1, we know that's a Monday night game at home against the Jets. At Minnesota week 2, at the Rams week 3, home for New England week 4, home for Arizona week 5. Let's stop right there. You should start the season off 4-1 or 5-0. That is at some point they're going to turn the shit up on you, because that's as soft of a schedule as it gets for a team that was in the Super Bowl a year ago and won their division. The Jets are tough. At the Rams is not easy, but you own the Rams. So that's not a normal, like, on the road game. You just own those boys. So you're going to beat Minnesota. You should beat Minnesota. You should beat the Rams, even though those are road games. New England stinks. Arizona, you should take care of them at home. That's not always the easiest thing to do, but I expect you to get it done. So the first 5 weeks, 4-1, 5-0. That's what you should be staring at. At Seattle on a Thursday night, that's going to be tough, but again, a game that you should win. Home for Kansas City, home for Dallas, and the home game against Dallas is a Sunday night game. Could be flexed. It's not going to be flexed. Not San Francisco, Dallas. No way. So those last 2 games prior to the bye, 3 if you count at Seattle. Okay. Now they're starting to ratchet it up a bit. You hit your bye in week 9. You come off the bye at Tampa Bay. Seattle at home, at Green Bay, at Buffalo. So 3 out of 4 on the road. And those 3 road games are against playoff teams from a season ago. Okay. Again, they're starting to ratchet it up a bit. So if you go back to prior to the bye and you start at Kansas City, you're talking about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 playoff teams in 6 games. We'll see, what that amounts to. At Buffalo, we talked about that already. That's a Sunday night game. That'll be a big one late in the season, week 13. Home for Chicago, home for the Rams. That's a Thursday night game. At Miami, home for Detroit. That is a Monday night game. 4 of your 6 prime timers are at home. So they're giving you an opportunity to play games at home in front of a national audience. See if you handle that well. And then at Arizona to finish up. It's a schedule that I think the 49ers can handle. And I wouldn't be shocked if we look up and they're 12-5 or 13-4 again. It's that kind of a schedule. But you're going to have to win some games against some good teams. But the good thing is a lot of them put you at home. With the exception of Buffalo, the Jets are at home. The Cowboys are at home. The Chiefs are at home. The Lions are at home. The Rams, that's a division game. You're going to play, both teams are going to get a game at home. So the only ones that are on the road that are tough to me, outside of the division games, obviously, are that Tampa potentially. Buffalo's your toughest game on the road. Miami's going to be, a little difficult with their speed offensively, and Green Bay. But most of the tough games, they're at home. You take care of business. You do the things that you've done over this run that you've had. You should be fine. Tampa Bay. Man, they are the wild card in all of this. If they're good, they're gonna wreak havoc on a lot of people's schedule, because they won their division and they're on a lot of good teams' schedule. If they're good, they're gonna cause some problems. If they're not good, they're going to have a rough go of it, because they're on everybody's schedule. If they're not good, it's going to be a long season. Home for Washington. They're giving you a chance to get off to a fast start against a rookie quarterback. You got to take advantage of it. At Detroit, that's tough. Home for Denver. Home for Philadelphia. At Atlanta. At New Orleans. home for Baltimore on a Monday night. And that at Atlanta is a Thursday night game. So let's stop right there. Let's go. And I said this, but damn. Let's go to the bye week, to week 11. Sheesh. All right. So Washington week 1, home for Washington, at Detroit, home for Denver, home for Philadelphia, at Atlanta, at New Orleans, home for Baltimore. That is a Monday night game. At Atlanta in week 5 is a Thursday night game. And so the Baltimore game on Monday Night Football is in week 7 at home. Home for Atlanta in week 8, at Kansas City. That is a Monday night game in week 9. Home for San Francisco in week 10. Yikes. So if we backtrack a bit, San Francisco playoff team from last year. Okay, no, San Francisco Super Bowl team from last year. Kansas City on the road on a Monday night, Super Bowl team from a season ago. Atlanta, supposed to be much improved. That's a division game, so it is what it is. Baltimore at home, Monday night, AFC Championship team from a year ago. At New Orleans, that's tough. Family business. You know what it is. At Atlanta, family business on the road on a Thursday night. You know what it is. Home for Philadelphia. That's going to be tough. So that stretch right there, I think the first 3 games of the season, you could win 2 out of 3. Home for Washington. You can probably lose at Detroit. Who knows? That's a rematch of the divisional round. And then home for Denver. You should win 2 out of your first 3, theoretically speaking. It gets really tough after that. Philadelphia, Atlanta, New Orleans, both of which on the road. Baltimore at home on a Monday night. Atlanta. So 3 out of 4 games in the division in that little pocket there, right? 2 of which are on the road. You're done with Atlanta after week 8. You play Atlanta twice in a 4-week stretch. At Kansas City on a Monday night, ouch. San Francisco San Francisco at home, ouch, ouch. And then you hit your bye. So that's a tough stretch. I talked about Tampa Bay's schedule being tough. If they're good, they're going to cause problems for other people. If they're not good, they're going to get beat up pretty good because this schedule is brutal. Come off the bye. You're at the Giants. You're at Carolina, home for Vegas. So it eases up as it should because that was tough the first 10 games. So it eases up post-bye at the Giants, at Carolina, home for Vegas, at the Chargers. That's going to be a little tough. At Dallas, that's a Sunday night game, rather. That's going to be tough. Home for Carolina, home for New Orleans. So it does get easier after the bye. You got to make it there. You make it to the bye, you got a shot. You got a shot. Tennessee. Don't expect a lot out of them, but, I'm intrigued by Will Levis. See what the schedule says. At Chicago, we talked about that one already with Caleb Williams. That will be interesting week 1. See how you handle that. Home for the Jets, home for Green Bay, at Miami, and then a bye. So let's analyze the first 4. Got a chance to win the first game. You won't be favored in you probably aren't going to be favored in any of the first 4 games. Maybe you're favored in week 1 on the road at Chicago by 1, right? You're not going to be favored against the Jets, the Packers, or the Dolphins in the following 3 games. Come off the bye, home for Indy, at Buffalo, at Detroit, home for New England. So that 4-week stretch there, 2 winnable games sandwiched. 2 games that you're probably going to lose on the road, sandwiched in between 2 games that you can win at home against Indy and New England. At the Chargers, home for Minnesota, at Houston, at Washington. So 3 out of 4 there. That's a nasty stretch of 4 out of 6. 5 out of 7 on the road. At Buffalo, at Detroit, home for New England, at the Chargers, home for Minnesota, at Houston, at Washington. It's 5 out of 7 on the road. Yikes. It is what it is. That's nasty though. Again, the opponents aren't terrible, but all of those road games are losable, to be honest with you. including a division winner in Buffalo, a division winner in Detroit, a division winner in Houston from a season ago, and the Chargers are going to be much improved. Same with Washington, so that's tough. Jacksonville, home. Cincinnati, home. At Indy, at Jacksonville, home for Houston. So you finish up the season. Your schedule is backloaded with division games. 5 out of your final 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 out of your final 7 games are division games. So your schedule is absolutely backloaded, including 3 in a row to finish up with the division. 2 out of those 3 games are on the road. So if you're in the mix division-wise, you're going to be able to make or break your own season because you're going to be playing a bunch of teams in the division late. So we'll see what happens with Tennessee. You're going to have a chance to I don't like your start to the season. It could put you in a hole early. And with a young quarterback, that could be a death sentence. And a lot of road games, 5 out of 7. Ooh, it's a tough schedule for Tennessee, if you ask me. And then finally, the Washington Commanders with a rookie quarterback starting more likely than not in Jaden Daniels. At Tampa Bay, very winnable game on the road, but we'll see what happens. That's a team that won their division a season ago. And again, Todd Bowles, eyes lights up when he sees a young quarterback. He may decide to blitz the draws off of him. Giants at home, at Cincinnati on a Monday night. Yikes. That's a tough game. At Arizona. So first 3 out of 4 are on the road, and 2 of which are teams that we expect to be good, or at least in the case of Cincinnati, we expect to be good. Tampa should be in that mix. And then they struggled with the Giants, and at Arizona is no laughing matter as well. So that's going to be a tough little stretch to start for Washington, see how they navigate that. Then you get Cleveland at home, at Baltimore. That's another tough one there. Home for Carolina, home for Chicago, at the Giants. That's the stretch there that I think is going to define their season in terms of what they're going to be. Are they going to be a competitive team, but they've got a long way to go and they're playing out the string after the bye week? Or are they going to be a team that's vying for a playoff spot post-bye? That 3-week stretch, weeks 7 through 9, I think is going to go a long way in determining that. Pittsburgh at home, week 10. At Philadelphia on a Thursday night. Washington only had 2 primetime games. And they got that week 17 in green, so we know what that means. Home for Dallas in week 12. Home for Tennessee in week 13. And then your bye. So that's a tough stretch there of Pittsburgh at Philadelphia, home for Dallas. That's a tough little pocket there as well. You come off the bye week. Latest bye you can possibly have, week 14. 3rd year in a row they've been slapped with that latest bye one can have situation, which is nasty. At New Orleans, off the bye. Home for Philadelphia. Home for Atlanta. That could be flexed Saturday, Sunday. And then at Dallas to finish up. Again, it's a very balanced schedule, very doable. But they're going to have to win some games, beat some teams, beat the teams they're supposed to beat. I use air quotes because who is Washington actually supposed to beat? And then find a way to win a game or 2 that people don't think you're capable of winning. And really, it's going to boil down to their defense. Can that defense keep them in games? If they can, they don't turn it over. They create turnovers. They'll have a shot, but they're a young team. You don't expect them to win a lot of those close games. You expect them to be in some games, but you don't expect them to win them. But same could be said for Houston last year. We saw what happened there, but we're not Houston. And I've been telling people that all offseason. So I'm sticking to my story. So that is the schedule. We have gone through it with the fine-tooth comb, 3 hours long. I knew it would be a long show, which is why I did not add anything else into it. And since we only have one super, we're going to read that and we're just going to split, right? I guess I'll give you a little garbage time. I do want to say a quick something about Harrison Butker, and then we'll get out of here. So read this super and then we'll bounce. Silver V. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, Louie T, who would you pick to have the most to prove next season? Trevor Lawrence, Deshaun Watson, Caleb Williams. By the way, you to go at your craft, my brother. I appreciate you, Silver V. So you could just take Caleb Williams out of the mix. He's a rookie. You know, while he's got a lot to prove being the number one pick, he's got time. Time's on his side. Trevor Lawrence, he's up against it because this is a big season for him. This is a make or break year because if he doesn't play well and you're Jacksonville, now you got a decision to make. Do we pick up the fifth-year option or not? Deshaun Watson, he's got time on his side, but he feels like, hey, bro, this is year 3 in Cleveland. We knew year 1 was going to sort of be a waste, a wash, if you will. We'll call it a wash because of the suspension. Year 2 was a wash because of an injury, and you didn't look all that sharp. This is a big year for Watson, man. He's pretty high on the list, but his career, like, isn't necessarily in the balance. Trevor Lawrence's career, like, he's the one 2021 quarterback that's still holding on. All the rest of those first-round quarterbacks have been traded already. Mac Jones, gone, traded. Justin Fields, gone, traded. Trey Lance, gone, traded. Zach Wilson, gone, traded. Like, all those quarterbacks are gone. He's the only one left. Last man standing. He's got to prove that they made the right decision, and he's not going to completely turn that first round in 2021 into a bust show. It's Trevor Lawrence. Deshaun Watson's not that far behind, though. We need to see something. The thing that's saving him is, hey, it wasn't pretty, but they were winning games when he started last year. But he's going to have to tighten up too. But it's definitely Trevor Lawrence, without question. Thank you for the super chat, man. Greatly appreciate you. So let's get to our final segment of the show and garbage time. So Harrison Butker had a controversial speech that he gave at a graduation recently. And he was the commencement speaker. Gave a speech that a lot of people felt set women back 50 years, which I think is a bit dramatic. Look, I'll just give you the short and the skinny of this. Anything that is, to me, extremist is dangerous. If you're an extremist and religion is your extreme thing, then it's dangerous because you're going to be overly judgmental or potentially willing to harm those who don't believe in the same religious beliefs that you have, right? It can be very dangerous. When you're an extremist and you're on the left wing, you care too much, right? You start caring about things that don't even have anything to do with you. So you're overly involved. If you're on the right wing, you don't give a fuck. You don't care about nothing, pretty much. You just do whatever the hell you want. And that's dangerous too, right? There needs to be balance. I always feel like there needs to be a middle ground. Life is best when done in moderation. And his speech was all the way to the right, you know, very sexist in nature. That's his belief. He's entitled to that. I don't care about what Harrison Butker thinks personally. This is the only thing that I find, funny about the situation, or interesting, I should say, not funny, but two things really. One, the NFL quickly distanced themselves from Harrison Butker, right? Three things. Let me say three things. One, the NFL quickly distanced themselves from Harrison Butker. Like, hey, We don't believe in anything this man said. He does not reflect the thoughts of the NFL. We're all about inclusion, yada, 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 yada. So they made sure to quickly protect the shield, which is what they do best. 2, I find it very interesting, although I know why, that all of a sudden the shut up and dribble crowd decides that, hey, he has a right to speak. It's the same thing they did when Drew Brees put his foot in his mouth when he was talking crazy and about the flag and had to quickly backtrack, and his teammates jumped on his back and he had to quickly, do a 180. It's amazing when that side comes, out in full force in support of somebody when they say stupid shit. But that's that extremist shit. And then 3, and I had another one. I can't remember what it was, but it was a good one. All in all, you have to be careful in who you allow to speak, like who you give a microphone to. Now, I don't even know the college that he spoke at, the university, whatever. And I don't know why, of all people, they chose Harrison Butker. Maybe he was an alum there. Maybe there's some sort of tie there as to why they chose him. Because it's very random, right, that they chose Harrison Butker. Unless he went back to his alma mater or something. Whatever the case may be, it's hard for you to know what someone's going to say, but you have to be careful with who you give a microphone to. They had to find that out the hard way. It is what it is. That was the third thing. I'm sick of cancel culture, though, right? Because the first thing people want to do when somebody says how they feel and you don't agree, and yes, again, it was an extremist comment, right? It was all the way to the right. It was really, really out of pocket. But the first thing people want to do is take someone's job away from them. Like, if there's hate involved, sure, right? Sure. Because if that person is showing you who they are and they don't like someone else strictly off of the color of their skin or because of how they look or what they believe, then maybe he doesn't need to be in that environment around other people, right? Maybe you do need to move in a different direction. He's sexist. Okay, so what? You want him fired because he's sexist? It's not like he's running a company and he's got 12 women, under him and he's treating them like shit. He's a place kicker in the NFL. Like, what are we talking about here? Yet there's a petition with like 20,000 signatures that want this man fired from the Chiefs. Like, what are we doing, guys? Stop that shit. Like, to me, I think wanting to get someone fired is, and in certain instances, I think it's warranted. But for the most part, that's Karen behavior. Like, what are you doing? Go sit down somewhere. What are we doing? I was on social media like a week ago or so, and a professor from, I want to say it was Princeton or one of these Ivy League schools, was reading Vlad TV his rights, which Vlad TV, we call him a baddie. He's a baddie. Bitch ass dude, right? I can't stand him, and people support him, and it makes me sick to my stomach because he's a culture vulture, takes and takes and takes from the culture. He doesn't give anything back to the culture, and people still give him all of his content. They give him his superpower. It's our people giving him his superpower, by the way, giving him a voice, and he gives nothing back in return. And as soon as someone challenges him on the shit that he does, he wants to get all defensive and I'll be contacting Princeton University about you. Like, go sit your bitch ass down, man. Like, that's the shit that bothers me. Everybody always wants to get people fired. If it's hateful and it's behavior that shouldn't be tolerated, yeah. That can't be your first initiative, though. Your first move can't be, hey, let's try to get that person fired. Anyway, I'm done with that. I digress. Josh Kirby says he was speaking at Benedict College, a small Catholic school in Kansas. Well, there you go. That's why he probably said the things that he said. And they probably knew what he was going to say. Maybe that's how they feel at Benedict College. I don't know. Again, why would Benedict College of all the, did he grow up in Kansas? I don't know. Well, he plays in Kansas City. I guess that's the answer to that. Probably does work in the community. And they said, you know what? We can get a Chiefs player to speak at our college at our commencement ceremony. Let's do it. It probably didn't go the way that they thought it was going to go. Anyway, I digress. You guys get out of here. I kept you way longer than any of you probably intended. I appreciate y'all kicking it with me on this Thursday night. I look forward to kicking it with you guys next time on the Louie T Network podcast. Keep your eyes peeled for content coming out over the weekend. I'll probably be taking the day off tomorrow, and but I'll still, leave something around for you. We'll see. It's been a crazy week. The kids have been sick. My daughter's staying home tomorrow because she had diarrhea. They had a stomach bug over the weekend, so it kind of spilled into the week. So my schedule's been all off. My wife got it. This vegan shit is real. This is the third time. And I've told you guys, when kids get sick, that shit hits different, right? Third time this in 2 years. My twins are, our twins are 2 years old. Third time in those 2 years that they've gotten some shit, and it's run through the entire house except dad. I've hung tough. Put mom down on her ass, put our oldest son down on his ass, and of course the two twins are just pooping, shitting, throwing up all over the place. Not dad. I'm not saying. Just saying. Anyway, you guys get out of here. I'll catch you guys on the flip side of the weekend. Enjoy your weekend, and when we come back, we'll be in the Western Conference and Eastern Conference Finals. Conference Finals in the NBA. I probably would have watched some more X-Men, so I'll probably talk about that. Maybe watched a movie or two over the weekend. We'll see how it goes. You know the vibes. Enjoy the weekend. Live it up. I'll see you next time. God bless. Good night.